Chapter 3729. The five-colored poison array set up by Luoho Supreme God King was not a physical array, nor did it have a light wall like other arrays. Therefore the attacks of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and the others were as light as cotton, unable to exert any force. Even so, the poison array was still smashed to pieces by the crowd. Many empty areas were exposed like ravines and pits. With the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others' strength and methods, they could destroy the poison array in less than 100 breaths. Within the poison array, Xianxia and Luoho Supreme God King, who were hiding, frowned and looked worried. The two retreated into the depths of the poison array while discussing countermeasures. Ophiuchus, I have not seen you for more than 1,000 years. Your deadly poison array is even more exquisite than before. If I had not paid attention to it, I would not have known when you set it up. Young master, you flatter me. It is a pity that the poison array is unorthodox. It is effective against ordinary Supreme God Kings, but it is useless against experts like the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the Battle Dragon King. These bastards are cunning. I thought we could anger them and make them rush into the poison array to attack us. I did not expect them to hold back and destroy the poison array before attacking us. Young master, my plan is not working. The poison array will be destroyed soon. We cannot stay here any longer. We have to leave. Since this is the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor's trap, the exit of the Mystic Realm must have been sealed. They are blocking the west side. We have no way out. From the looks of it, we can only retreat into the depths of the Mystic Realm and look for an opportunity to counterattack. Then we will do as you say. After all, only the two of us can fight in the poison array. Xianxia and Ao Jinin cannot. We have to find another battlefield. In a flash, the master and servant came up with a plan. While the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others were still destroying the poison array, the two of them retreated to the east and left the poison array's range. The Gold Origin Dragon Emperor was indeed very powerful. When Xianxia and Luoho started to retreat, he detected them with his consciousness. After Xianxia and Luoho left the poison array and flew into the depths of the Mystic Realm, he led a dozen Supreme God Kings and chased after them aggressively. Whoosh, whoosh. Xianxia and Luoho Supreme God King flew across the sky at the speed of light. A few thousand miles behind them, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor, Heartless Supreme God King, and the Battle Dragon King chased after them murderously. As time passed, the two parties got closer and closer. Of course, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others widened the distance. The ones at the front were him, Battle Dragon King, Thoughtless Divine King, Qin Yu and Tan Yu. The other 10 God Kings were slightly slower and were left behind 10,000 miles away. When Xianxia and Luoho were 200,000 miles away from the poison array, the environment in front of them became more complicated and dangers gradually appeared. After all, they were already in the depths of the secret realm. Not only were there a large number of resources and treasures hidden, but there were also unknown dangers lurking. Xianxia decided to stop retreating and fight in the air above the lofty mountain range. Luoho God King did not hesitate at all. He hurriedly took out his divine battleship and summoned Xianxia and the others. With a flash of white light, more than 30 figures flew out of the divine warship. The leader was Xianxia and 3 elders. The other 30 were all wearing armor. They were elite guards of the upper-level god realm. The group appeared in the sky. Without the Luoho Supreme God King's order, they got into formation and fought with all their might. Although the 30 upper-level God Realm guards were destined to be cannon fodder in this battle, they were not afraid. However, they were not afraid and were prepared to sacrifice themselves. Of course, their sacrifice would not be in vain. They would do their best to delay their opponents and buy time for Xianxia and the Luoho Supreme God King. Just as they got into formation, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others caught up. Seeing that the Luoho Supreme God King only brought 4 upper-level God Kings and 30 upper-level God Kings, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others laughed disdainfully. Ha! The 10,000 Demon Alliance really has no one. Do you think these trash can stop me? What an idiot. Luoho, you were so confident earlier. I thought you brought a lot of people. I didn't expect you to only bring so few people. Thieves of the 10,000 Demon Alliance, die. The 5 experts laughed wildly and brandished their Kenshin weapons. They were about to attack Xianxia and the others. However, the Luoho Supreme God King brandished his dual blades and charged forward with murderous intent. Gold Origin Dragon Emperor, I am your opponent. The Luoho Supreme God King shouted angrily. He locked his divine senses on the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and slashed out 2 streaks of blood-red light. Just in time. The Gold Origin Dragon Emperor shouted as well. He wielded the sky-turning rod with both hands and brandished it. Bam, 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 bam. The 2 upper-level God Kings exchanged blows in the sky. The sky was filled with divine lights and deafening explosions. The incomparably violent shockwave carried with it billions of shards of divine light and shot out in all directions, blasting the surrounding mountain range into ruins. After the 2 exchanged blows, they were both pushed back 100 miles by the violent shockwaves. However, no one was injured. Instead, their battle intent and ferocity were aroused. They flew further into the sky to fight a battle from afar. Seeing the 2 upper-level God Kings flying away and disappearing into the horizon, the Heartless Supreme God King and the War Dragon King hurriedly chased after them to help the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor. However, they had just flown 100 miles when a figure suddenly appeared in front of them and blocked their path. "I am your opponent." Along with a sudden cold shout, Ji Tianxing, whose robes were as white as snow, appeared in front of the 2 powerhouses. His left hand was behind his back and his right hand was holding a sword. He was exuding sword intent and murderous intent. He was like a peerless god of death. At this moment his divine power was condensed to the maximum. His aura was at its peak and he was far stronger than the Heartless Supreme God King and the War Dragon King. The 2 experts were shocked and looked at him in disbelief. They couldn't help but exclaim, "You're a upper-level God King? You were severely injured by me at the entrance of the Xuanji Grotto Heaven? Now you are a upper-level God King? How is this possible?" As far as the Battle Dragon King knew, Long Tian, who had appeared out of nowhere, was merely a high God King. And the Heartless Supreme God King even humiliated and injured Ji Tianxing personally a year ago. Therefore he didn't take Ji Tianxing seriously at all. However, the 2 of them didn't expect Ji Tianxing to become an upper-level God King. This was too terrifying. There were only 3 upper-level God Kings in the entire Stellar Source continent. Moreover, 2 of them were born in the past 1,000 years. Who would have thought that a 4th upper-level God King would appear now? Taking advantage of the moment when the Heartless Supreme God King and the War Dragon King were stunned, Ji Tianxing attacked without hesitation. He didn't care about the reputation of upper-level God King, and didn't think of taking the opportunity to act cool. He just didn't want to miss this excellent opportunity and used his ultimate killing move without hesitation. Sword of Extermination. At this moment, Ji Tianxing absorbed the 5 elements realm power and slashed out with all his might. A holy golden sword light that was 10,000 feet long descended from the sky and slashed at the Heartless Supreme God King. Chapter 37:30. Ji Tianxing was not magnanimous. On the contrary, he was very vengeful. Back then he headed to Xuanji Grotto Heaven, wanting to pay a visit to the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor to inquire about Heartless. In the end, not only was he blocked outside the entrance by the Heartless Divine King, he was even severely injured. From that moment onwards he remembered this deep-seated hatred and swore to kill the Heartless Divine King one day. And now it was the moment for him to take revenge. Hence, this sword of his slash was aimed at the Heartless Divine King and not the Battle Dragon King. The 100,000-foot-long golden light greatsword contained more than 230 laws and divine marks, its power berserk to the extreme. The sky was instantly slashed apart, splitting open a massive ravine, revealing the pitch-black void. And the space around the Heartless Divine King was confined, making him unable to move an inch, let alone teleport to dodge. The greatsword had yet to arrive, and the peerlessly horrifying sword intent already suppressed the Heartless Divine King, filling him with fear, his divine power sluggish. Even though the Heartless Divine King was only stunned for an instant before being startled awake. But under his fear he could not escape at all, let alone retreat unscathed. In a quarter of an instant he instinctively made the correct reaction. He erupted his divine power to the limit, holding the high-grade king-class divine sword with both hands, blocking above his head. At the same time he tried his best to tilt his head to the side. This way, even if he was severely injured, he would not be cleaved in half by a sword and die on the spot. The reality was indeed as he wished. Boom. Crack. Following an earth-shaking, world-shaking loud bang, the golden sword light that was resplendent like the scorching sun cleaved the Heartless Divine King with a loud bang. That all-conquering sword light actually cut his divine sword in half tyrannically. Even though his divine sword was the same as the Burial of Heaven sword, both high-grade king class. But this Armageddon sword move was condensed from the power of the world, its power unbelievably powerful. The Heartless Divine King's divine sword broke on the spot, collapsing and flying out. Fortunately, the divine sword was cut in half, neutralizing more than half of the Armageddon sword's power. Its speed also slowed down. When the Armageddon sword cleaved him, he already tilted his head, avoiding the fatal blow. The resplendent sword light cleaved his right shoulder, severing his right arm on the spot. The wound on his shoulder was flat and smooth, revealing his dark golden bone. Divine blood was gushing out from it. The incomparably violent impact sent Divine King Heartless flying, tumbling 100 miles away. Although his right arm had been chopped off and his body was heavily injured, he was still able to fight back. However, he managed to avoid a calamity and preserve his life. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Although all of this seemed to take a long time to describe, it all happened in an instant. Only now did Battle Dragon King Qin Yu and Tan Yu react. The three of them witnessed the Heartless Divine King being heavily injured with their own eyes. They were both shocked and furious. They roared furiously and attacked Ji Tianxing with all their might. Long Tian die. Damned thief, hand over your life. The three experts unleashed their full strength and brandished their swords and spears. They used their ultimate killing moves and surrounded Ji Tianxing at the same time. Not only did Ji Tianxing not retreat, but he also sneered and went forward. Just in time. He had just broken through to the 7th stage not long ago and became a high-level god king. Although he believed that he had reached 80% of his previous life strength, he never had the chance to verify it. Right now, being besieged by 3 great experts was the best chance to verify his strength. 10 directional absolute shadows. Facing the 3 experts who attacked with all their might, Ji Tianxing gave a low cry and used his divine ability ultimate skill. Instantly, his entire body flickered with golden light and split into 8, forming 7 clones. The 7 clones were exactly the same as his original body. There was no difference at all. However, the Burial of Heaven sword in the clones' hands was fake. It was condensed from god power. In addition, the clones only had 50% of the original body's strength. But him and the 7 clones teaming up was enough to deal with Battle Dragon King Qin Yu and Tan Yu. Battle Dragon King Qin Yu and Tan Yu charged over aggressively and were about to slay Ji Tianxing under their swords and blades. Unexpectedly, with a flash of white light, 8 Ji Tianxings appeared in the sky. The 3 people's expressions changed drastically. Their heartbeats even stopped. However, the 3 people were all experienced and knowledgeable people. They immediately understood that this was definitely a clone divine ability. The additional 7 clones looked imposing and shocking, but actually they only had half of the original body's strength. Thinking so, only then did the 3 experts let out a sigh of relief and continue attacking. However, it was them besieging Ji Tianxing earlier. Now it became Ji Tianxing besieging them. Space-time blade. God exterminating sword. Heavenly dragon proud world / sword breaking 9 heavens. Daytime sword. A flabbergasting scene appeared. The 7 clones actually executed different ultimate skills and divine abilities, launching a besieging attack on Battle Dragon King 3 people. While Ji Tianxing's original body ignored the 3 of them and teleported 100 miles, appearing beside Heartless Divine King and launching a pursuit. Heartless Divine King had an arm chopped off and was blasted flying 100 miles. He had just consumed a divine pill and was currently circulating to deploy the medicinal strength, suppressing his injuries and recovering his divine power. He did not expect that the 3 colleagues failed to trap Ji Tianxing and instead let Ji Tianxing chase after them. Heartless Divine King jumped in fright and hurriedly stopped circulating, teleporting away. His lifeblood divine sword was already severed. How could he block Ji Tianxing's assault barehanded? Whoosh! Heartless Divine King retreated abnormally decisively, actually dodging Ji Tianxing's assault and teleporting 1,000 miles away. Ji Tianxing's sword stabbed empty air. He was not discouraged in the slightest and also teleported 1,000 miles to chase after. Heartless Divine King, you're dead for sure today. Don't even think about escaping. Ji Tianxing locked onto his divine soul aura and charged in front of him once more, brandishing his sword and slashing repeatedly. Seeing him so overbearing, his aura fierce, heartless divine king naturally knew the reason. But now that it came to this, it was also impossible for him to plead for mercy in numbers. He could only dodge in a sorry state and cast spells to resist. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Ji Tianqing's sword art was astonishingly fast, unleashing 3 moves in an instant, slashing out sword lights that filled the sky. Each streak of sword light contained laws, divine power and heaven-reaching sword intent, berserk and tyrannical to the extreme. The sky in a radius of 10,000 miles was sliced into shreds by the sword lights, revealing countless void rifts. Heartless Divine King dodged abnormally hard and was stabbed by the sword lights very soon. Fresh blood splattered all over his body, adding several bloody holes. Such an outcome made him understand that blindly dodging would not work. Hence he could only bring out a backup divine artifact and block Ji Tianqing's assault with all his might. This divine artifact was a 2-foot-long short sword. It was dark purple in color all over, shrouded in a terrifying sanguine light. Of course, this was also a high-grade king-level divine artifact. But compared to his lifeblood divine sword, the power and grade were somewhat weaker. Even if he resisted with all his might contending with Ji Tianqing, he was suppressed from start to finish until he retreated repeatedly, his injuries worsening continuously. He pinned his hopes on the Battle Dragon King Qin Yu and Tan Yu, 3 people, being able to rush over to help. But the 3 people were besieged by Ji Tianqing's 7 clones and could barely fend for themselves. How could they still have the qualifications to help him? He looked towards the west again and saw those 10 high-ranking divine kings rushing over, revealing a hopeful look. But Hu Xinyue and the 3 myriad demon alliance elders went up to greet them, delaying their footsteps. What was even more puzzling was that a rock giant and 4 divine king powerhouses appeared out of nowhere and also joined the battle. Both sides started fighting high up in the sky. No one could help heartless divine king. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 37-31. The 5 god kings that appeared out of nowhere were naturally Ji Tianqing's trusted aides. The rock giant was Yank. The other 4 were Chao Qingyu, Bai Feng, Yunyao and Ji Ku. Even though only Bai Feng was an upper-level god king among the 5 while the other 4 were middle-level god kings. However, Ji Tianqing had already prepared weapons and equipment for them. Moreover, Yunyao and Ji Ku were gifted and could kill enemies of a higher level. The 5 of them, together with Hu Xinyue and the 3 elders of the Myriad Demon Alliance, made a total of 9 people. Although they couldn't defeat the 10 upper-level god kings of the Xuanji Grotto Heaven easily, they wouldn't be defeated in a short period of time. Hence the situation was in a stalemate. Yunyao, Ji Ku, and the rest were fighting against the 10 upper-level god kings in the sky. The battle was extremely intense. Figures flashed in the sky and divine light danced in the sky, covering a radius of 30,000 miles. The battlefield was in a state of chaos, and deafening explosions were ceaselessly sounding out. Shockwaves that could destroy the heavens and the earth burst out and blasted the lofty mountains and lofty ridges in all directions into ruins. Meanwhile, Ji Tianqing and his 7 doppelgangers were fighting against the Heartless God King, War Dragon King, and the rest respectively. They actually had the upper hand. In other words, he was fighting against the 4 experts alone and he could still suppress them. Only a peak God King could achieve such terrifying strength. Of course, it had to be the peak God King's original body. Doppelgangers couldn't do it. For example, Luoho Divine King and Golden Source Dragon Emperor couldn't do it. Heaven-piercing sword. Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. Bam, bam, bam. Ji Tianqing was valiant and ferocious as he attacked the Heartless God King ferociously. The Heartless God King was in a fluster under the bombardment of sword lights and divine skills. He dodged left and right and he was in a very sorry state. As time passed, his injuries worsened rapidly. His body was dyed dark gold by blood. He was completely suppressed by Ji Tianqing. His injuries were getting worse and his strength was getting weaker. If there was no miracle, he would be killed by Ji Tianqing in at most a quarter of an hour. Anticipating this outcome, the Heartless Divine King made up his mind. He had to escape. Even if he fled at the last moment and caused the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's plan to fail, he was not willing to die here. At this time, Ji Tianqing rushed over again and slashed out a huge divine sword with all his might. The thoughtless Divine King no longer blindly dodged. He actually pushed the protective divine light to the extreme. Both of his hands held the dark purple short sword horizontally in front of him, slashing out the sharpest light blade. Boom! The giant divine sword slashed down with a loud bang, instantly shattering a few light blades, and then struck the purple short sword. Fragments of divine light burst out. Cracks and gaps appeared on the purple short sword, and it was sent flying. The divine greatsword's might was weakened by more than half, and it struck the thoughtless divine king's protective divine light. Crack! A hole had also appeared in the protective divine light that was so condensed that it was almost tangible. Dense cracks had also appeared on it. The thoughtless divine king was struck by the violent power. Blood immediately spurted out from his 7 orifices and he let out a groan. At the same time he was also sent flying by the terrifying impact. He was sent flying hundreds of miles away at the speed of light. On the surface, it looked like he was unable to block the sword. He was sent flying by Zhou Xian and he was severely injured. But in reality he had already neutralized 80% of the giant sword's might. The injuries he suffered were not serious. After flying 300 miles, he calmed down his divine power and instantly revealed his original form. Zhoosh! With a flash of golden light, the thoughtless divine king turned into a 3-legged golden crow divine bird that was as big as a mountain. Originally, the golden crow was a majestic divine bird that was as dazzling as the scorching sun. But it was severely injured. Its body was covered with hideous wounds that were so deep that its bones could be seen. The most obvious wound was that more than half of its golden wings had been cut off, leaving only a row of wing bones. It looked rather hideous. The thoughtless divine king roared angrily. He exploded with his fastest speed and sped towards the west, escaping towards the exit of the Sky River Mystery Realm. At this moment, in a dangerous situation, no matter how angry and humiliated he was, he could only forcefully endure it. Since he decided to escape, he would not drag his feet. He would not take another look at Zhou Xian, and it was even more impossible to say any harsh words. That was just a waste of time. Whoosh! The golden crow divine bird turned into a streak of golden light, streaking across the sky like lightning, fleeing tens of thousands of miles in an instant. Such terrifying speed, only the golden rock divine bird of the same realm could achieve it. Very clearly, the thoughtless divine king did not hesitate to consume his power and lifespan in order to escape. He used his trump card ultimate skill, forcefully increasing his escape speed. In just a blink of an eye, Zhou Xian was left behind by him 20,000 miles away. Damn it! Zhou Xian frowned fiercely, cursing with a gloomy expression. Even though he used his teleportation divine ability, chasing after 10,000 miles in one step. But the distance between the two always maintained around 20,000 miles. In a short period of time, it was very difficult for him to catch up to the thoughtless divine king, let alone intercept and kill him. Hence, after Zhou Xian chased for 50,000 miles, he decisively used another trump card ultimate skill. Endless Sky of Chaos. Swoosh! A white light flashed and Zhou Xian disappeared, merging into one with the heaven and earth within a radius of 300,000 miles. As long as he was willing, he could appear anywhere within 300,000 miles with just a thought. Such a heaven-defying divine ability, if used to travel, escape or chase, it was even more terrifying than teleportation or teleportation. Whoosh! In the next instant, Zhou Xian crossed 20,000 miles out of thin air, appearing in front of the golden crow divine bird, 1,000 feet away. The golden crow divine bird was fleeing for its life, burning with anxiety and anxiety. Seeing Zhou Xian relentlessly chasing after it, following behind for 20,000 miles, it was filled with anger. However, before it could react, it sensed a weak spatial fluctuation in the sky 1,000 feet in front of it. Could it be that he teleported here? This thought flashed through the golden crow divine bird's mind, and it was extremely shocked. It subconsciously activated its divine power, forming a shield in front of it and changed its direction, wanting to avoid Zhou Xian. Unfortunately, the distance between them was too close. It was only 1,000 feet. With its speed of teleportation, this distance was not even 1/10 of a second. Therefore, it did not have time to form a shield or change its direction before it crashed into Zhou Xian. Swoosh! Then an unbelievable scene appeared. The golden crow divine bird and Zhou Xian collided, but there was no loud noise and neither of them was sent flying. It was as if Zhou Xian was invisible and did not exist. The golden crow divine bird passed through him without any hindrance. However, after it had rushed out for 10,000 miles, it felt an excruciating pain in its organs, and its energy was quickly dissipating. Then its speed decreased drastically and it gradually stopped in the sky. It slowly lowered its head to look, only to find that there was a hideous bloody hole in its chest. The bloody hole extended from its chest to its back, cutting off its heart meridian and destroying its internal organs. More than 10,000 miles behind it, Ji Tianxing was standing in the sky, unharmed. He was still in the posture of a bow, holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands. His body was covered in divine light and not a drop of blood was on him. Chapter 37-32. The golden crow's eyes widened, revealing a look of disbelief and fear. It instantly understood. Ji Tianxing was not sent flying, but pierced through its divine body with his sword, destroying its physical body in one strike. It was not that it pierced through Ji Tianxing, but Ji Tianxing pierced through its heart. It actually took the initiative to collide with this fatal stab. As a rare top-notch assassin in the world, it had always been the one to assassinate others, but now it was actually assassinated by someone else's sword. How ironic. Coo-coo. The golden crow's throat emitted drum-like panting sounds and its body began to tremble. Its body's vitality rapidly declined, and it gradually lost control of its body, finding it difficult to even stay in the sky. At this time, Ji Tianxing crossed the sky with his sword and landed in front of it. Heartless Divine King, I heard that you are hailed as the #1 assassin in the Astral Source continent. What I want to say is that when one cultivates the divine Tao to the extreme, assassins, swordsmen and bladesmen are all the same. The only thing that distinguishes the strong and the weak is the use of power, laws and divine ability techniques. Ji Tianxing looked at the golden crow with a calm expression and said indifferently, "Your divine body is destroyed and only your divine spark is left. Accept your fate." As his voice fell, the golden crow's vitality was completely cut off, and its mountain-like body fell from the sky. Endless golden divine blood gushed out from the bloody hole in its chest like a flood that had broken through a dam, sprinkling all over the sky. Under such circumstances, the heartless divine king had no other choice but to leave his divine spark and continue to flee. Accept his fate and wait for death? That did not exist. Swoosh. A basin-sized dark golden diamond-shaped crystal flew out of the golden crow's body, and fled into the distance as fast as a stream of light. Even if it knew that Ji Tianxing was powerful and that it might not be able to escape alive, it still had to flee with all its might. However, Ji Tianxing was already prepared. If he could let it escape once, how could he let it escape a second time? Swoosh. The thoughtless divine king's godhead had just escaped 10,000 miles away when the surrounding sky suddenly lit up with golden divine light. The dazzling golden light instantly converged and condensed into a dragon claw as large as a mountain, which suddenly clenched tightly. Crack. Following a crisp sound, space froze. The heartless divine king's godhead was also captured by the dragon claw and held tightly in the palm of his hand. Long Tian. You goddamn bastard, even if I die, I won't let you off. The furious roar of the heartless divine king came from within the divine deity. His tone was incomparably venomous and filled with monstrous hatred. Even though it was bound by the heaven-capturing dragon claw, it still struggled with all its might. It even wanted to detonate its own godhead and perish together with Ji Tianxing. However, Ji Tianxing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb, firmly suppressing it and quickly devouring its divine power. As a result, the more furious it was and the more it tried to explode, the faster the heaven-mending orb devoured it. Ji Tianxing flew over with an indifferent expression, removed the heaven-capturing dragon claw, and held its godhead with both hands. His palms flickered with a faint white light, activating the power of the heaven-mending orb to accelerate the devouring of the godhead. He turned a deaf ear to the heartless divine king's roars and curses, and couldn't be bothered to care. There was no need to waste words with a person who was bound to die. Long Tian. If you dare to kill me, the Dragon Emperor will definitely not let you off. But I am the protector of the Golden Crow clan. If you kill me, the Golden Crow clan will be irreconcilable with you. Just wait for the revenge of the Golden Crow clan and the mysterious grotto. Not only you, the myriad demon alliance will also be annihilated. The heartless divine king's divine power was rapidly depleting. His emotions were filled with fear and despair as he cursed with a venomous tone. He brought up the Golden Crow clan and the mysterious grotto one after another, threatening Ji Tianqing fiercely. He only hoped that Ji Tianqing would be wary so that he would have a chance of survival. But very unfortunately, no matter what he said, Ji Tianqing ignored it all. Along with the passage of time, the heartless Divine King's godhead gradually shrunk. His power also weakened rapidly, resulting in his consciousness becoming muddled and blurry as well. The roars and curses became softer and softer. After 7 minutes, the wash-basin-sized godhead was mostly devoured. The heartless Divine King's consciousness gradually collapsed and he finally fainted. Only then did Ji Tianqing cast his divine ability ultimate skill, crushing the godhead to pieces, shattering it into several dozen fragments. Then he put away the heartless Divine King's godhead fragments into his spatial ring, turned around and rushed back to the battlefield. The heartless Divine King perished just like that. To date, this was the strongest person that Ji Tianqing personally killed. That's right, the heartless Divine King's strength was even a little stronger than Xue Shang and Tao Yongxing. But Ji Tianqing still killed him effortlessly. This battle made him greatly reassured in his heart, finally verifying his combat strength. Just as he said previously, he already had 80% of his peak back then. Swoosh. Before long, Ji Tianqing returned to the battlefield. Previously, this region with a radius of 100,000 miles was all towering mountains and precipitous ridges, as well as a sea of forests. But now, after the impact of the aftermath of many god kings fighting, this region had long turned into ruins. Looking as far as the eye could see, the ground was shattered, a stretch of yellow soil ruins, filled with ravines and deep pits. Between heaven and earth, apart from the dazzling divine art light and shadows, there was smoke and dust that lingered and did not dissipate. The great battle was still ongoing. The first thing that Ji Tianqing saw was Yunyao, Jiku, Xinyu, and the rest still resisting the attacks of the 10 god kings. Both sides had already fought for 45 minutes. Profound Secrets Grotto Heaven's 10 high-ranking god kings finally gained the upper hand. Jiku, Yunyao, and the rest of the 9 gradually fell into a disadvantage, being beaten until they continuously retreated in defeat, exhausted from resisting. However, their retreat was steady and not scattered, and there were not too many casualties either. At this rate, they would be able to hold on for at least an hour before they were defeated. In addition, both sides were injured, light or heavy. Many people's hair was disheveled and their clothes were stained with blood. They looked very miserable. For example, Xinyu, Ao, Jinying, Yang, and Bai Feng, who were leading the charge, were all covered with wounds and bloody holes. They looked to be heavily injured. Yun Yao and Jiku were also injured, but it was not fatal and their combat strength was not affected too much. The two of them became more and more courageous as they fought, and they even gradually entered the zone, unleashing unbelievable combat strength that exceeded their normal limits. It could not be helped. Ever since Ji Tianqing ascended to the divine realm, they had basically been cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime. In so many years they rarely had the chance to fight, and ultimately they lacked the tempering of blood and fire. Today they were able to fight without any scruples. This was what they had been longing for. It was also an excellent opportunity for them to gain experience. However, Ji Tianqing did not dare to let them continue to be suppressed when he saw this scene. After all, Yang, Bai Feng, Xinyu, and the rest's injuries had worsened and their lives were in danger. Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to rescue them, and attacked the 10 profound secrets Grotto Heaven's God Kings. Infinite Sky of Chaos. Since it was an ambush, he naturally had to use his strongest assassination ability to end the battle quickly. A white light flashed and he disappeared. In the next instant he traversed 20,000 miles and appeared on the other side of the battlefield, behind a high-ranking God King. Chapter 37-33. This high-level God King was the commander of the Golden Dragon Guards under Qin Yu. This person was a peak 7th Heaven God King. He had fought bravely in the previous battle and was heavily injured. Under the cover of his companions, he took the opportunity to retreat to the edge of the battlefield. He took a divine elixir to suppress his injuries. He originally planned to suppress his internal injuries and recover his divine power before rejoining the battle. However, he did not expect death to befall him just as he was trying to calm his chaotic divine power. Whoosh! Along with a slight spatial fluctuation, Ji Tianqing appeared behind him out of thin air. Without the slightest bit of hesitation or sloppiness, He directly thrust his sword towards the back of his head. The two were less than 10 meters apart. Ji Tianxing's sword was as fast as a flash of light and as powerful as a thunderbolt. The formless sword will of heaven shrouded this person's entire body and immobilized him. This god king instantly woke up and realized the danger of death. He widened his eyes in shock. He wanted to teleport away, but he realized that the space was frozen. He wanted to twist his body to avoid the fatal sword, but he realized that his body was immobilized and could not move. Under such circumstances, death was a foregone conclusion. With a dull sound, the sword of burial of heaven easily pierced through the back of this person's head. The tip of the sword emerged from his forehead. The pitch-black, sharp tip of the sword dripped with blood. This god king's sea of consciousness and godhead had been shattered by the sword. He died on the spot. The commander of the Golden Dragon Guards, a peak 7th heaven god king expert, was killed by Ji Tianxing in a single strike. He did not even have the chance to resist or dodge. Even the heartless god king, who was known as the continent's #1 assassin, could not do such a terrifying assassination. When Ji Tianxing retrieved the sword of burial of heaven, he flicked his wrist and the tip of the sword flicked. Dozens of shattered godhead fragments followed the sword of burial of heaven out of the head and into his palm. He then took this person's interspatial ring and put it into the ring along with the godhead fragments. Then his figure flashed and disappeared again. He blended into the 300,000 miles of heaven and earth and secretly observed the situation on the battlefield, looking for an opportunity to assassinate. Not only did he observe the battle between the God Kings, he also observed the battle between the 7 clones, the Battle Dragon King Qin Yu and Tan Yu. To his surprise, Battle Dragon King and the other two had been besieged by the 7 clones for so long, but not only had they not fallen into a disadvantageous position, they had even turned the tables. Both Qin Yu and Tan Yu suffered heavy injuries and turned into blood men. War Dragon King's injuries were also very miserable. His hair was disheveled and his armor was shattered. He looked very miserable. However, the Battle Dragon King wielded a divine diagram and a divine spear. He was actually very valiant. 2 of his 7 doppelgangers had already been destroyed. Only 5 doppelgangers were still fighting. Avatars were different from avatars. The doppelganger was formed by a wisp of divine consciousness and vigorous divine power. Even if it was destroyed, it would not be a great loss. However, the external incarnation was different. It required a strand of one's soul to be split off and refined with a few tens of types of rare materials, and it could move about on its own. A high-quality avatar was almost equivalent to an extra life. If it was destroyed, it would be a disastrous loss. Even though Ji Tianxing did not feel the pinch of losing 2 of his doppelgangers, he was still a little anxious. If this dragged on, all of his doppelgangers would be destroyed. At that time, Battle Dragon King and the others would rush over to help. Yun Yao, Ji Ku and the others would definitely be in danger. Therefore, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate anymore. He continued to attack the divine kings of the Xuanji Grotto Heaven. Zush. A Golden Dragon Guard commander was charging forward bravely. He waved his divine saber and slashed out a sky full of saber lights. He used his ultimate divine ability to attack Yank. Yank, who was thousands of feet tall and looked like a mountain, was fighting a bloody battle. He attacked crazily. However, he was definitely not the Golden Dragon Guard commander's match. He was about to be injured by the saber lights. At that moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly appeared beside the Golden Dragon Guard commander and stabbed him with his sword. The 2 of them were less than 10 feet apart. The Golden Dragon Guard commander's attention was all on Yank. He only wanted to kill Yank with one slash. He did not expect someone to appear beside him out of nowhere and attack him. Therefore, when he sensed the space ripple beside him and saw a young man in a white robe appear out of nowhere, he had no time to dodge or escape. Another dull thud was heard. The Burial of Heaven's sword was as fast as a flash of light. It accurately pierced the Golden Dragon Guard commander's temple and came out from the other side. The Golden Dragon Guard commander's body stiffened on the spot. Life drained from his eyes and he died on the spot. As Ji Tianxing retrieved the Burial of Heaven sword, he flicked his sword again and took out a dozen godhead fragments. Then he reached out his left hand and took the person's interspatial ring. He put away the godhead fragments and interspatial ring. His figure became blurry again as he merged with heaven and earth. The entire process happened in a flash. It was so fast that no one could react. He attacked, killed, kept his sword and took away the godhead fragments and interspatial ring. He did all of this in one go. After killing 2 high-level divine kings in a flash, Ji Tianqing started to look for his third target. At this time the 8 surviving divine kings noticed something strange. Seeing 2 of their companions killed by Long Tian, the 8 divine kings retreated in fear. They did not dare to turn around and run. They retreated step by step and gathered together. The 8 of them formed a circle and formed a battle formation. They were on guard against each other. This was a smart move and the best way to deal with this. For a while, Ji Tianqing could not find a chance to attack. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Hu Xinyue and the others could not attack by force. They could only take the opportunity to rest and recuperate. It looked like this stalemate was going to continue for a while. Ji Tianqing was worried about the battle between his 5 clones and the Battle Dragon King and the others. However, he did not want to wait any longer. Since he could not assassinate them by surprise, he appeared above the 8 divine kings and used his ultimate killer move to attack. Sword of Apocalypse. As soon as he appeared, he held the Burial of Heaven sword tightly with both hands and slashed down with all his might. Swoosh. Suddenly, a divine golden sword that was tens of thousands of feet long slashed through the sky with the power to destroy everything. As the divine golden sword slashed down, 100-mile-long crack appeared in the sky, revealing a pitch-black void. Before the divine golden sword arrived, the boundless sword intent had already enveloped the 8 divine kings, causing them to be filled with fear. At this moment, the 8 divine kings looked up at the sky with fear. They looked at the crack in the void and the sword of apocalypse that was slashing down from above. They knew very well that Ji Tianqing's attack was to force them to scatter. Once they fled pathetically, they would definitely scatter and be killed by Ji Tianqing one by one. Therefore, the 8 divine kings wielded their Kenshin weapons in unison. They worked together to use their ultimate skills to block the sword of apocalypse. In just an instant, they worked together to form a divine light barrier that enveloped the 8 of them. Immediately after, they released all kinds of divine techniques and slashed at the sword of apocalypse. They did not want to destroy the divine golden sword. They only wanted to weaken the power of the sword of apocalypse. Boom. Crack. In the next moment, the divine golden sword slashed down, shattering the divine techniques and slashing at the divine light barrier. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 37-34. A huge explosion sounded in the sky, spreading for thousands of miles. The seemingly thick and solid barrier of divine light was actually cleaved in half by the divine golden sword and sent flying. The violent impact, mixed with countless fragments of divine light, splashed in all directions. The power of the divine golden sword was naturally weakened by half. Immediately after, when it struck the god kings, it was also not as violent as before. However, 50% of the power of the sword of annihilation was enough to kill a few god kings. Bang. 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 2 rather unlucky high-level divine kings were chopped into pieces on the spot by the divine golden sword. Not only were their divine bodies shattered, their divine cores were also cleaved into pieces and they died. There were also 3 god kings who were too close and brushed past the divine golden sword and were also struck by the violent sword intent. The 3 of them were sent flying, the armor on their bodies shattered, their divine bodies covered in wounds, dark red divine blood constantly gushing out. Thump. Thump. The 3 divine kings flew 100 miles away and fell into the ruins. They smashed into the ground with a few muffled thuds and raised dust into the air. Other than these 5 unlucky god kings, the other 3 god kings were relatively luckier. They were only sent flying by the violent impact and did not suffer any serious injuries. After retreating dozens of miles, they circulated their energy and suppressed the chaotic divine power, returning to normal. However, they were unable to calm down and were still filled with shock. They looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of fear. It was only at this moment that they personally experienced how formidable Ji Tianqing's strength was. If not for the mission and orders, they would have turned and fled long ago. Cough cough. The 3 heavily injured god kings crawled out of the ruins and flew into the sky, coughing up blood violently. They had no time to consider the situation of their companions. They all took out healing divine pills and hurriedly consumed them, circulating their energy to suppress their injuries. And at this time the invisible Ji Tianqing quietly appeared again. Swoosh. With a weak spatial ripple he appeared behind an injured god king. This god king was heavily injured and his divine power was in chaos. The sharpness of his consciousness was also greatly reduced. When he sensed the abnormality and realized that something was wrong, death had already arrived. Peef! Another muffled sound that represented death rang out. The pitch-black sword of burial of heavens silently penetrated his head, destroying his sea of consciousness and godhead. The entire process was as fast as lightning, but there was no dazzling brilliance. It was rather low-key. However, the Tao of assassination was exactly like this. It only pursued speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness, and it never required gorgeous moves or gorgeous shadows. After killing the deity king with a single strike, Ji Tianxing quickly collected the deity king's godhead fragment and space ring before vanishing again. At this moment there were still 5 god kings alive. 2 of them were severely injured while the other 3 were fine. However, when they saw their companions being assassinated one after another, and personally witnessed Ji Tianxing's mysterious assassination technique, they were already scared out of their wits. All the missions were thrown out of his mind. He did not even care about the dignity of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. They only wanted to live. They didn't want to die under Ji Tianxing's sword. Therefore the 5 god kings turned around and fled without hesitation. They all used their fastest speed to escape to the Mystic Realm's exit. Although the main force and top experts of the mystical grotto heaven were in the Heavenly River Mystic Realm. However, they knew that there were experts guarding the Mystic Realm's exit. Even if that expert was not a lackey of the mystical grotto heaven, he was still loyal to the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and would definitely carry out his mission loyally. As long as they escaped to the Mystic Realm's exit, they would definitely be able to escape. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing hurriedly swung the sword of burial of heaven and slashed out 36 dazzling sword lights that shot towards the 5 god kings at lightning speed. He did not want to kill the 5 god kings in one move. He only wanted to stop them, injure them, and delay their escape. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The sword lights streaked across the sky, covering thousands of miles in an instant and intercepting the 5 god kings in an instant. 3 of them were lightly injured and reacted quickly. Before the sword lights reached them, the 3 of them slowed down their escape speed and used all their strength to defend themselves. Following a series of dull thuds, the 3 god kings were sent flying by the sword lights. Blood splattered everywhere in the air. Fortunately, they were only severely injured and did not lose their lives. Still in shock, the 3 of them ignored their injuries and fled even faster as if their lives depended on it. As for the other 2 god kings, they were already severely injured and their strength had decreased greatly. When the sword lights filled the sky, the 2 of them did not even have time to dodge and were sliced into pieces by the violent sword lights. Blood rained down from the sky. The 2 god kings were smashed into pieces, and their godhead fragments were also scattered in the sky. After a breath, Ji Tianxing flew over. He waved his hand and picked up the 2 godhead fragments and interspatial rings before turning to leave. He had already injured the 3 surviving god kings. There was no need for him to waste time chasing after them. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Hu Xinyue, and the others had already recuperated and were chasing after the 3 god kings with all their might. There were a total of 9 god king experts chasing after the 3 injured god kings. There was no suspense in the outcome. And now, Ji Tianxing was most concerned about the battle between the 5 clones and the Battle Dragon King. Secondly, what was the outcome of the battle between the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and the Luoho God King? Unfortunately, the 2 peak god kings had already shifted their battlefield. They flew hundreds of thousands of miles away and entered the depths of the Sky River Secret Realm. Ji Tianxing's consciousness could only cover a radius of 100,000 miles. He could not see any traces of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor or the Luoho God King. He could only look at the dazzling divine light that kept shining in the depths of the secret realm. He was sure that the 2 peak god kings were still fighting and there was no clear victor. When Ji Tianxing crossed thousands of miles in a single step and rushed back to his battlefield, the situation in front of him stunned him. Previously he had observed that the Battle Dragon King Qin Yu and Tan Yu were severely injured, but 2 of their clones were destroyed. They were fighting against 5 clones. Now that 100 breaths time had passed, the battle situation had changed again. Another 2 of the 5 clones had been destroyed. The remaining 3 were also riddled with injuries. As for the Battle Dragon King Qin Yu and Tan Yu, they were only more severely injured. They could still fight. If they continued fighting for 100 breaths time, they would definitely be able to destroy the remaining 3 clones. However, when they saw Ji Tianqing kill several God Kings consecutively, they were extremely shocked. When Ji Tianqing turned and flew back, they actually abandoned the 3 clones and turned to flee without hesitation. They clearly knew that if they continued fighting, Ji Tianqing would kill them before they could destroy Ji Tianqing's clones. Facing such a powerful demon, if they did not flee, would they be waiting for death? However, the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 did not flee in the direction of the Secret Realm's exit. That would only lead them to Ji Tianqing. Instead, they fled in the opposite direction. They fled towards the depths of the Secret Realm and headed straight for the battle between the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and the Luoho God King. Chapter 37-35. Without a doubt, the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 had made the right choice. If they had fled towards the exit of the Mystic Realm like the other upper godly kings, even if they could avoid Ji Tianqing, they would still be surrounded by Yun Yao, Ji Ku and the others. Yun Yao and the others only needed to delay them for a moment, and Ji Tianqing would arrive and kill them one by one. If they fled into the depths of the Mystic Realm, Ji Tianqing would not be able to catch up to them in a short period of time. Of course, this was not the only reason why the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 had fled into the depths of the Mystic Realm. They knew that the battle had already progressed to this stage. With just the 3 of them, there was no way they could turn the situation around. The only one who could turn the situation around was the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor. Unfortunately, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and Luoho Supreme Being were too far away. They were still engaged in a fierce battle and there was no clear victor. The Battle Dragon King and the other 2 wanted to reinforce the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor as soon as possible. As long as they helped the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor kill Luoho Supreme Being, victory would be assured. Even if Ji Tianqing chased after them, the 3 of them and the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor could easily kill Ji Tianqing if they joined forces. At that time, Luoho Supreme Being and Ji Tianqing would both be dead. Hu Xinyue, Yun Yao and the others would be fish on the chopping board waiting to be slaughtered. Unfortunately, the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 had a good plan, but they had neglected the most important point. On the surface, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and Luoho Supreme Being were the strongest, but in reality they were only avatars. They only had 50% of their original body's strength. In the Sky River Mystic Realm, the strongest person was Ji Tianqing. Infinite Sky of Chaos. When Ji Tianqing saw the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 fleeing with instantaneous movement, he did not hesitate to execute his ultimate move. This was the 3rd time he had used this ultimate move today. His body glowed with white light. When he disappeared, his face was pale and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. After all, the Infinite Sky of Chaos was too powerful and heaven-defying. Every time he used it, he would use up a huge amount of divine power. Using it several times in a short period of time would cause great harm to his mind and body. However, in this situation, Ji Tianqing had no choice but to endure the pain and forcibly use it. Shua. He merged with heaven and earth, instantly covering an area of 300,000 miles. Everything in this area was under his watch. It was as if he was everywhere and could clearly see the situation in every corner of this area. He could clearly see the wounds on Battle Dragon King, Qin Yu and Tan Yu's bodies, as well as their expressions and gazes. He could also see the 3's escape routes and secretly communicate with each other through telepathy. After all, the 3 of them were renowned experts and wise strategists. They were the right-hand men of the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor. Even when they were running for their lives, they didn't forget to discuss countermeasures and their next plan of action. Shua. Without any hesitation, Ji Tianqing instantly crossed 50,000 miles and appeared beside Tan Yu out of thin air. He appeared without a sound. His body and the Sword of Burial of Heaven were dull and unadorned. However, his speed was extremely fast. It was simply impossible to see him with the naked eye. Swish. The way he assassinated Tan Yu was also extremely concise, straightforward and swift. There wasn't any extra movement. It was another sure kill stab. As usual, it was fast, accurate and ruthless. He had unleashed the art of assassination to the extreme. Tan Yu was also a top-notch assassin who was proficient in disguise and assassination. However, Ji Tianqing chose him as the target because he was the weakest. He was only at the 8th level of the Divine King realm. Moreover, he was already severely injured. His body was covered in blood and his hair was messy. He was in a sorry state. Since Ji Tianqing wanted to assassinate him, he had to aim for a one-hit kill. He couldn't waste any time. If he assassinated Qin Yu and Battle Dragon King, there was a chance that they would fail and escape. In that case he wouldn't be able to catch them off guard and would even waste time. When the silent sword stabbed towards him at almost the speed of light, Tan Yu's body tensed up. He was scared out of his wits. He felt a strong sense of impending death. His heart stopped beating and his eyes widened in despair. There was no need to analyze or think. He knew what was going on instinctively. At the same time he knew that he couldn't dodge this stab. He would definitely die. However, he wasn't willing to die like this. His death was worthless. Even if he was going to die, he had to do something. Thus, he used his transformation divine ability. His body shrunk by 10 times and he became a 1-foot-tall dwarf. The smaller the body, the more nimble it was to move within a square inch and the harder it was to be stabbed. At the same time he used all his divine power to stab at Ji Tianqing with the dagger in his hands. The seemingly ordinary stab contained a lifetime of assassination experience. Moreover, the dagger flickered with dozens of divine patterns of laws. It contained the most violent power. Even the gloomy sky was pierced by the dagger and a pitch-black spatial crack appeared. Tan Yu was determined to die. Even if he was killed by Ji Tianqing, he had to injure Ji Tianqing to buy time for his companions to escape. When the burial of heaven was only 1 foot away from Tan Yu, he suddenly shrunk to 1 foot tall. It looked like the burial of heaven was about to pass over his head and land on empty air. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was also a little surprised. He marveled at Tan Yu's reaction. It was fast and accurate, completely instinctive. As expected of a top-notch assassin. The method of shrinking one's body saved time and effort, and it was also very effective. However, while this method was useful for others, it was useless against Ji Tianqing. His attainments in the sword Dao and his control of the burial of heaven were simply subtle and precise. It was as if he was controlling his own fingers. In a tenth of an instant he flipped his wrist and the burial of heaven stabbed diagonally downwards into Tan Yu's head. Crack. With a crisp crack, the burial of heaven pierced through the top of Tan Yu's head, through his skull, and also through his sea of consciousness and godhead. Incomparably violent power and sword intent exploded in Tan Yu's head, instantly destroying his mind and godhead. Of course, Ji Tianqing's control of power and sword intent was very subtle. It only destroyed his mind and didn't spread outwards. Thus Tan Yu's head didn't shatter or explode. It was just that his godhead shattered, his consciousness fell into darkness and he died on the spot. The dagger in his hand also stopped in front of Ji Tianqing, only 3 feet away. It was this 3 feet distance that became a natural moat that could never be crossed. This was because he only thought of shrinking his body to save his life at the critical moment, but he forgot a very simple principle. When he shrunk his body, his arms naturally became shorter. Even if he stabbed with all his strength with the dagger, it was only 2 feet away, not even as long as the burial of heaven. Ji Tianqing could stab him to death with the burial of heaven from 5 feet away, but he couldn't touch Ji Tianqing at all. Even if the dagger shone with divine light and was covered in divine patterns of laws, it burst forth with unparalleled sharpness and stabbed Ji Tianqing. But that was divine light and invisible divine power after all. In the end, it couldn't break through Ji Tianqing's defenses and was completely blocked. Chapter 37-36. After killing Tan Yu in one move, Ji Tianqing quickly put away his sword and snatched the divine spark fragment and spatial ring. All of his actions were done in one go like flowing water. At this time, Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu had already flown 10,000 miles away, pulling apart the distance between them. Even though the two of them had discovered Ji Tianqing and used their divine senses to see the process of him killing Tan Yu, they were still terrified. They felt grief and indignation for Tan Yu's death and wanted nothing more than to tear Ji Tianqing into pieces. However, the two of them tacitly chose to speed up and escape, not stopping at all, nor did they stop to watch or curse. 4 peak experts like them, their wills were as firm as a rock and they would never act on impulse. Even in the most dangerous situation, the two of them would calmly deal with it. They were very clear that even if they stopped to intercept Ji Tianqing and save Tan Yu, it would be useless. If it were them, they wouldn't be able to block Ji Tianqing's heaven-shaking stab that had been planned for a long time, let alone save Tan Yu. Rather than wasting time, they might as well take the chance to escape and not disappoint Tan Yu's dying wish. Swoosh. Ji Tianqing put away the spatial ring and divine spark fragment, turned to look at Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu's backs and frowned. Truly too calm to the point of being heartless bastards. Their comrade was killed and they didn't even bat an eye. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself, then crossed the sky as fast as lightning, chasing after them 10,000 miles in one breath. That perfect sword attack just now had consumed a lot of his mental strength and divine power. His face was increasingly pale and the sweat on his forehead was even denser. His strength had also decreased. Wanting to use boundless sky of turbidity again to assassinate Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu had become an extravagant hope. His internal organs and meridians had already been injured after being attacked and cut several times. If he forcefully used boundless sky of turbidity a fourth time, he would only kill 1,000 enemies and suffer 800 casualties. Therefore he temporarily suppressed his killing intent and chased with all his might. Breath after breath passed, 10,000 miles returned to 10,000 miles. After 30 breaths of time, Battle Dragon King Qin Yu and Ji Tianxing had chased for 300,000 miles. The area that the three of them flew past had long been destroyed by the battle between the Golden Source Dragon Emperor and the Luoho Supreme Being. It was now a charred wasteland. Even the gloomy sky was filled with crisscrossing ravines and tens of thousands of space cracks. From the devastated land and the remnant berserk divine power in the world, the three of them could deduce how intense the battle between the two peak divine kings was. Similarly, the three of them were filled with worry and anxiety. Now the three of them finally saw the figures of Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and Luoho Supreme Being. What made the three people very surprised was that the two peak divine kings were already not in the Milky Way mystic realm. In the area where they were fighting, the area with a radius of 50,000 miles was shattered, filled with dark cracks and holes. The terrifying void storm turned into pitch-black hurricanes, passing through the holes and cracks and madly pouring into the Sky River secret realm. Evidently, the battle between the two peak divine kings had destroyed the Sky River secret realm and destroyed the spatial barrier of the secret realm. The secret realm was originally an alternate dimension. It relied on the indestructible spatial barrier to be sandwiched between the dragon realm and the void. However, at this moment the spatial barrier was shattered, and even the will of the heavenly Tao could not repair it. The densely packed holes and cracks in the sky showed no signs of healing. Such a scene made the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu's hearts palpitate, and they were filled with fear and admiration. They also knew that the two peak divine kings were truly enraged and had used all their strength and means. They probably felt that the Sky River secret realm was too weak and could not withstand their ravaging. The two of them actually passed through the spatial cracks and charged into the dark void, continuing their battle in the void. Ji Tianxing, Battle Dragon King, and Qin Yu stopped in the sky that was riddled with holes and looked up at the dark outer realm. Although the Golden Source Dragon Emperor and Luoho Supreme Being were very far away from them, at least 60 to 70,000 miles away, they could no longer see the figures of the two peak divine kings clearly, and they could not see the injuries of the two experts. However, from the constant flashes of divine light in the void and the exploding divine art projections, the battle between the two peak divine kings had reached its most intense moment. Even the dim starry void was illuminated by the dazzling divine light. The dazzling five-colored divine light, mixed with the violent impact, turned into waves of shockwaves that spread out like ripples, sweeping across the void. There were also thousands of profound nomological law divine patterns, scenes of the great Tao and divine art projections that flashed in the void. To all the divine king experts, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to watch the battle between two peak divine kings at close range. The two peak divine kings' mystiques, techniques, and understanding of nomological law divine patterns were all things that they could observe and learn from. However, it was a pity that the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu were destined to not be able to observe and learn. When the two of them slowed down and looked up at the battle in the void, Ji Tianxing had already pounced towards them like a shooting star. His left hand punched out with a dragon and elephant projection, while his right hand slashed out with a giant heaven-splitting sword, attacking the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu respectively. The Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu were instantly jolted awake. They hurriedly fled towards the void crack in the sky, and used their divine artifacts and mystiques to defend themselves. The Battle Dragon King held the divine map in his left hand and the Golden Dragon Divine Spear in his right hand as he waved it with all his might. The giant heaven-splitting sword slashed down, but it was first blocked by the divine light in the sky, and then the Golden Dragon Divine Spear dissipated the force of impact. Finally it struck the divine map. Suddenly, the ancient divine formation diagram was split in half by the giant divine sword and shattered into pieces that filled the sky. The fragments ignited with golden divine flames, and like golden fire lotuses, they bloomed in the sky and danced in the sky. A superior king-level divine map was destroyed by Ji Tianqing just like that. However, the Battle Dragon King also took this opportunity to spit out a mouthful of blood from Ji Tianqing's attack. He was sent flying back and crashed into the void crack. He paid the price of being heavily injured to block Ji Tianqing's heaven-splitting sword and successfully escaped into the outer realm. On the other side, Qin Yu's reaction was also similar. He did not hesitate to take out 3 superior king-level divine artifacts, and all of them surrounded him. He also condensed his protective divine light to the limit. The 3 divine artifacts were a divine saber, a divine armor, and a divine cauldron. The mountainous dragon elephant divine fist carried the power to destroy everything, and more than 100 divine runes of law. It blasted away the divine cauldron and shattered the divine armor. In the end, when the dragon elephant divine fist hit Qin Yu, it was blocked by the divine saber. Boom. Peef. Amidst a deafening explosion, Qin Yu was also sent flying by the punch. He rolled and crashed into the outer realm and fell into the outer realm. However, he managed to keep his life. He was only heavily injured, and blood spurted out of his 7 orifices. As long as he could keep his life, he could accept any kind of injury. This was what he and the Battle Dragon King thought. Seeing the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu fall into the void, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to chase after them. He passed through the spatial crack and was about to enter the outer realm. However, at this moment, the angry, anxious, and worried voice of the Rahu Divine King suddenly sounded in his mind. Retreat. Chapter 37:37. It was a short sentence, just 2 words, but it was almost roared out. His words contained a sense of anxiety that burned like a flame, causing one's heart to tremble upon hearing them. Even with Ji Tianqing's strong will, he was stunned when he heard Luo Ho Supreme Being's roar. He was a little confused. Wasn't Luo Ho Supreme Being fighting the Gold Source Dragon Emperor? If he rushed over to help, he would definitely have a chance to kill the Gold Source Dragon Emperor if he teamed up with Luo Ho Supreme Being. This was an excellent opportunity. Why retreat? Moreover, his tone was so anxious and resolute. Resolute. When Ji Tianqing realized this, an idea flashed through his mind as he suddenly understood something. Luo Ho Supreme Being and the Gold Source Dragon Emperor had been fighting for a long time. They had exchanged at least tens of thousands of blows. Now, both of them must have suffered serious injuries and victory was about to be decided. At this moment, Luo Ho Supreme Being's sudden roar meant that something big had happened. Ji Tianqing immediately guessed that either Luo Ho Supreme Being or the Gold Source Dragon Emperor had self-detonated in a desperate counterattack. That's right, self-detonation. This was a simple, violent, yet effective counterattack. Even if they sacrificed themselves, they could destroy the other party and perish together. At the same time, this was the only possibility that would make Luo Ho Supreme Being so anxious. He sent Ji Tianqing a voice transmission to retreat. Otherwise, Ji Tianqing would not have to retreat at all. This was because Luo Ho Supreme Being knew his strength. Ordinary mystiques could not threaten him at all. He was 60 to 70,000 miles away from the 2 pinnacle Supreme Being in the void. Only self-detonation could seriously injure or even kill him. When this thought popped into his mind, Ji Tianqing was 80% sure of the answer. Therefore, he did not have time to think. He retreated from the spatial crack without hesitation and returned to the Sky River Mystery Realm. At this moment, the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu, who had already charged into the void, suddenly stopped. Their bodies stiffened. The 2 of them seemed to have received the Gold Source Dragon Emperor's voice transmission. Their expressions turned ugly. They were shocked and fearful. Just from their expressions, it could be inferred that they had also learned some shocking and unbelievable news. However, the 2 of them reacted quickly. They only paused for a moment before regaining their senses. They looked at each other and took out their divine weapons without hesitation to protect themselves. Moreover, the 2 of them activated their divine power at all costs and sped towards the void to the side at their fastest speed. Tens of thousands of miles ahead of them was the battlefield between Luo Ho Supreme Being and the Gold Source Dragon Emperor. 20,000 miles behind him was a fragmented void crack. Further in was the Sky River Secret Realm. The 2 of them could not move forward nor could they retreat. They could only flee to the side. Unquestionably, this was the right choice at this moment of a time. Almost in the next instant, a dazzling divine light suddenly lit up in the void, and an enormous explosion that shook the heavens and the earth erupted. The dazzling golden light exploded in the void like a scorching sun, and also like a huge mushroom cloud rising into the sky. In an instant, the void within 100,000 miles was lit up. The entire region turned into a golden world. Boundless divine light and divine power swept out in all directions with the explosion of the golden mushroom cloud. Without a doubt, this was the self-destruction of a peak supreme being. The golden light that could destroy everything not only destroyed the void but also swallowed his opponent. In less than half an instant, the terrifying shockwave of golden light slammed into the space barrier of the Sky River Secret Realm. The spatial barrier near Ji Tianxing had already been destroyed by Luoho Supreme Being and the Gold Source Dragon Emperor. It was full of cracks and holes. At this moment, the spatial barrier, which was full of holes, was bombarded by the resplendent golden light and immediately collapsed. Tens of thousands of cracks appeared on the spatial barrier before it collapsed and shattered into pieces. Boundless spatial fragments splashed out and fell into the void. The Sky River Mystery Realm was completely destroyed. There was no way to patch up the huge hole in the spatial barrier. Terrifying void windstorms surged in from the hole and wreaked havoc in the Sky River Mystery Realm. The sky, earth, and ruins were all swallowed by the dark void windstorms and turned into a void. Ji Tianxing reacted quickly and retreated into the Sky River Mystery Realm in time to avoid the explosion of the Supreme Being's self-destruction. However, he was not fast enough to escape. He was immediately engulfed by the golden light and was about to be swallowed by the rapidly spreading void windstorms. At this critical moment, he could only endure the pain and weakness and forcibly use the infinite sky of chaos. Even though his forceful use of the everlasting sky of chaos had already exceeded the limits of his endurance, causing his internal organs, meridians, and mind to be injured and torn apart, he was still able to endure the pain. However, in order to escape, he could not care less. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianxing disappeared into thin air right before the golden shockwave engulfed him. In the next instant, he used the infinite sky of chaos to travel more than 200,000 miles and escape into the depths of the Sky River Mystery Realm. The golden light from the explosion was still spreading and rushing into the Sky River Mystery Realm. It crushed the sky, earth, and spatial barriers along the way, leaving behind only a boundless dark void. However, Ji Tianxing had already put some distance between himself and the explosion. His life was no longer in danger. Cough, cough. He stood in the sky, his body bent. He coughed violently and blood spurted out from his nose and mouth. His face was as white as a sheet. He was sweating profusely. His breathing was very weak and chaotic. However, he did not dare to waste time healing himself. He only took one look at the golden light that was rushing towards him and then sped up his retreat. After all, he was not sure how far the explosion of a supreme being's self-destruction could cover. It could be 500,000 miles or 800,000 miles. However, no matter what, it could not be less than 300,000 miles. Swish. At this moment, Ji Tianxing was extremely worried and anxious. He really wanted to know who was the one who had initiated the self-destruction. Was it the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor or the Luoho Supreme Being? Why had things developed to this stage? Why did it have to end with self-destruction? These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. However, he did not have time to think carefully. He could only try his best to escape. When he escaped another 80,000 miles, the golden light finally caught up to him. No matter how fast he was far inferior to the divine light of a supreme being's self-destruction. Bang! With a muffled sound, Ji Tianxing was like a sandbag that had been punched. He rolled and fell toward the mountains in the distance. He only felt a sharp pain in his back and heard a few cracking sounds of bones breaking. Then he flew across 1,000 miles of sky in a daze, then fell back into the mountains. Before he fainted, the last scene he saw was the endless ruins and the rapidly spreading void. The golden divine light that had spread more than 400,000 miles gradually became thinner and weaker. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 37-38. When the peak divine king self-destructed, the dazzling golden light exploded like the sun. The battle dragon king and Qin Yu were already running away with all their might. Although their speed was not as terrifying as Ji Tianxing's, they had already escaped. They used their teleportation divine abilities to escape 120,000 miles away before they were engulfed by the spreading golden light. Bam! Bam! Without a doubt, the two of them were also hit by the dazzling golden light. They flew out like arrows and smashed into the depths of the void. They were already prepared. They used their divine power to condense their protective divine light to the limit and took out a few divine artifacts to protect themselves. However, when those divine artifacts were hit by the dazzling golden light, they quickly melted like snow under the scorching sun. Their protective divine light was also weak and could not withstand a single blow. It was instantly destroyed. Fortunately, when the dazzling golden light hit them, it was blocked by the divine artifacts and protective divine light. Its power was already weakened by a few %. The two of them did not die on the spot. They were only severely injured by the dazzling golden light and fell unconscious. After losing consciousness, the two of them were like rootless duckweed. They fell into the void thousands of miles away and floated deeper into the void along with the violent torrent of golden light. After suffering such severe injuries, it was unknown when the two of them would wake up. After an unknown period of time. Perhaps it was 2 hours. Perhaps it was a day. Ji Tianxing, who was unconscious, could vaguely feel a few majestic divine powers continuously entering his body to help heal his injuries. His consciousness gradually left the darkness and he slowly woke up. When he opened his eyes, he found himself lying in a wide and bright hall. There were several people surrounding him. Everyone was looking at him with concern and worry. The two faces closest to him were still beautiful even though they were tear-stained. They were Yunyao and Jiku. Besides them, Yang Chao Qingyu, Bai Feng and Ao Jining were all present. Everyone's clothes were ragged, their hair was messy and they were covered in blood. A few of them were severely injured. However, they completely ignored their injuries and stared at him without blinking. Their feelings of concern were clearly expressed in their words. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing roughly understood that he had been saved. At this time, the great battle in the Sky River secret realm must have ended. The hall he was in was actually the interior of a divine ship. At this moment, when everyone saw Ji Tianxing open his eyes and wake up, they all revealed joyful smiles and cheered in delight. Young master is awake. Everyone look. Great. Young master is finally awake. The Lord has finally woken up. The originally quiet hall immediately became lively. Everyone surrounded Ji Tianxing and asked about his well-being, paying attention to his injuries. Yun Yao and Ji Ku in particular heaved a sigh of relief. The heavy burden in their hearts was finally lifted, and they quickly wiped away the tears on their cheeks. Ji Tianxing's face was still pale, and his spirit and divine power were still very weak. However, he was already fully awake. He supported his injuries and sat up. He waved to everyone and said, "Everyone, don't worry. I'm fine." After that, he secretly released his divine sense to check his injuries. The situation was not optimistic. Just as he had expected, he was now seriously injured. His internal organs had been shattered and displaced. Fortunately, everyone had treated him and stopped the bleeding. His godhead had been hit by the explosion of the golden light, and there were some faint cracks. This caused his divine power and spirit to be weak. He would need to recuperate for many years to recover. As for the 9 wounds all over his body and the dozen or so broken bones on his back, his injuries looked frightening, but he did not take them to heart. These were all physical injuries. With his strong self-healing ability, he would definitely be able to recover after 2 years of careful recuperation. In general, these injuries were serious, but they were still within the acceptable range. In particular, he had endured the impact of the explosion of the golden light, but he only suffered these injuries. It was really unbelievable. "Yao Yao Cuckoo, how long have I been unconscious?" Ji Tianxing was silent for a moment before he asked Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Yun Yao replied in a gentle voice, "Tianxing, you have been unconscious for 6 hours. Phew. That's good." Ji Tianxing was relieved again. He quickly said, "Whose divine ship are we in? Are we returning to the demon city?" Ji Ku quickly explained, "Brother Tianxing, the great elder is piloting the divine ship now. We are rushing back to the demon city. Everyone needs to recuperate." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked, "Is the matter of the Sky River Mystery Realm over? Have the remnants of the Xuanji Grotto been eliminated? No, let Hu Xinyue return to the Sky River Mystery Realm. I have to go and see if there are any fish that escaped the net." As he spoke, he got up and was about to go to the control room to find Hu Xinyue. Yun Yao quickly pulled his arm and shook her head at him. She explained, Tianqing, don't worry. The matter of the Sky River Mystery Realm is over. Previously, the few of us intercepted the 3 divine kings. After killing them one by one, we went to the depths of the Mystery Realm to meet up with you. Unexpectedly, before we could find you, we saw an endless amount of golden light coming. It shattered the Sky River Mystery Realm and brought about a dark void. That golden light was very scary. It spread for more than 400,000 miles before it gradually dissipated. When she said this, Ji Ku, Chao Qingyu and the others all looked scared. Yun Yao continued, Fortunately, we were far away and retreated in time. That was why we were not hit by the terrifying golden light. After the golden light dissipated, we found you in a broken piece of the Mystery Realm. At that time you were unconscious and lying in a ruin. That ruin was surrounded by broken space and pitch-black void. After we found you, we worked together to help you heal. After that, we searched the Sky River Mystery Realm again. However, we did not find anyone from the Xuanji Grotto. At this time, Jiku continued, those divine kings from the Xuanji Grotto had all been killed by us. There should only be a few leaders left. However, we searched the entire Sky River Mystery Realm and did not see anyone. At that time we guessed that those few leaders had most likely been killed by you. Even if they were not killed by you, they must have died under the terrifying golden light. Therefore we brought you out of the Sky River Mystery Realm. The entrance of the Mystery Realm was sealed by a god array. It was only when everyone worked together to break the array that we could leave the Sky River Mystery Realm successfully. However, there was a group of experts guarding the entrance of the Mystery Realm. The leader was a 9th stage divine king. According to them, he was the clan leader of the Xianxia clan. Although they had the advantage in numbers, not knowing why, the clan leader of the Xianxia clan seemed to be afraid of us. He ran away without saying a word. We did not dare to waste time to prevent you from healing, so we did not chase after the clan leader of the Xianxia clan. You know what happened next? We just left for an hour and you woke up. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing finally understood the whole story and was really relieved. He was thinking that the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu's abilities were weaker. They were not like him, who could execute the endless sky of turbidity and escape 300,000 miles in an instant. He reckoned that those two fellows had died under the golden light and turned into ashes? Chapter 37-39. Ji Tianqing understood a few things after witnessing the self-destruction of a peak godly king. Firstly, the self-destruction of a peak godly king's avatar could affect a radius of 500,000 miles. If it was the self-destruction of a peak godly king's true body, the range would be even wider, possibly reaching 800,000 miles. The power of the self-destruction golden light was too terrifying. Even a peak godly king would not be spared if he got too close. Hence he had to be on his guard in the future. Secondly, Xuanji Grotto Heaven and the 10,000 Demon Alliance were at loggerheads. They also had a lot of information, and Xueshang had played a huge role in this. It was obvious that Xueshang did not dare to attack him because of his oath to the heavenly Tao. However, Xueshang was not willing to submit to humiliation. Even if he had to grovel and curry favor with the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, he had to take revenge. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing made up his mind. After he recovered from his injuries, he had to go to the Nebula Grotto Heaven to kill Xueshang. The Taotai clan and the Xianxia clan were the root of all the troubles and wars in the Starsource continent. At this moment, Chao Qingyu and Ao Jinying asked in unison, young master, what was that golden light? When the two of them asked, everyone quieted down. Although the others did not ask, they stared at Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions, waiting for him to answer. Although they had already discussed it before, they could guess the answer in their hearts. However, they did not dare to be sure. They still wanted to ask Ji Tianqing, the person involved. Ji Tianqing recalled the boundless golden light that engulfed everything. He said in a low voice, I believe you have already guessed it. That's right, it was the self-destruction of a peak godly king. His words confirmed everyone's guess. Instantly, everyone's expressions changed drastically, and they were filled with shock and worry. Especially Ao Jinying, the 4th elder, and the 5th elder. They could not wait to ask, young master, was the self-destruction of the alliance leader, or the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor? When they asked this question, the three of them still had a glimmer of hope in their hearts. They prayed silently that the self-destruction was not the alliance leader. If the Alliance leader had self-destructed, he would definitely die. If it was the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor who had self-destructed, then the Alliance leader might still have a chance to live. However, Ji Tianxing shook his head and said in a heavy tone, "It doesn't matter who initiated the self-detonation. At that time they were fighting in the void and were very close to each other. Under such circumstances, no matter who initiated the self-detonation, the outcome would be mutual destruction." After hearing the answer, Ao Jinying and the two elders were filled with grief. Their eyes reddened. Although Yang Chao Qingyu Bai Feng and the others did not recognize God King Luoho, their hearts were heavy and their faces were gloomy. The hall fell into silence and the atmosphere was rather stifling. Ji Tianxing's gaze swept across the crowd. He frowned and said, "You don't have to be so sad. Those are only their external incarnations, not their true bodies. At most, after spending 100 years of effort, they will be able to refine another avatar." After his explanation, everyone came to a sudden realization and felt much more relaxed. Yang Chao Qingyu Bai Feng and the others were completely unaware. As for Ao Jinying, the fourth elder and the fifth elder, they did not know much either. In the entire Myriad Demon Alliance, only the left and right protectors and Grand Elder Hu Xinyue knew that God King Luoho was an avatar. It was precisely because of this that Ao Jinying and the two elders were filled with grief, despair and indignation. Now that they knew the truth and that their alliance leader's life was not in danger, they heaved a sigh of relief. Ji Tianxing continued, "My injuries are not serious. You don't have to worry. I will be fine after a few years of seclusion. However, all of you have suffered serious injuries from the battle. Don't crowd around me. Go back to the secret chamber to recuperate. When we return to the Myriad Demon City, I will discuss matters with all of you." Ao Jinying and the two elders hurriedly bowed and said, "Yes, sir." Since Alliance leader Luoho was not around, they respected Ji Tianxing. They did not dare to disobey him. After they bowed and left, Ji Tianxing opened the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda and sent Yang Chao Qingyu and Bai Feng into the pagoda. He instructed them to go into seclusion to recuperate. Only Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao and Ji Ku were left in the hall. The two women were worried about Ji Tianxing's injuries. They insisted on accompanying him and circulating their energy to help him recuperate. However, Ji Tianxing shook his head and refused. "I know my own situation. These injuries only look scary, but they are not dangerous. As for the two of you, you have suffered serious injuries from the battle earlier. Your strength is also very weak. Quickly return to the distorted space-time to recuperate. Don't leave behind a disaster that will affect the foundation of your divine Tao." Yun Yao and Ji Ku could not withstand his repeated persuasion. Seeing that his injuries were not serious, they entered the distorted space-time to enter seclusion. After sending everyone away, Ji Tianxing sat on the spot and pondered for a moment. Then he took out a special purple communication jade slip, entered a message and sent it out. Swish. The jade slip streaked across the sky and disappeared into the depths of the sky. Ji Tianxing looked at the blue sky outside the window and waited silently. That purple communication jade slip was the emergency contact method that Divine King Luoho had given him. All this while, Ji Tianxing had never encountered such a dangerous situation. Therefore, this was the first time he used it. Although he had just told everyone that Divine King Luoho and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's clones should have perished together. However, he did not see the outcome with his own eyes. He still had a glimmer of hope and luck in his heart. If it was the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor who had self-destructed, Divine King Luoho might have been able to survive with his strength and methods. Time passed quietly. Soon an hour had passed. Ji Tianxing sat for a long time but did not receive a reply. 2 hours later there was still no reply. His eyes gradually dimmed. He already had an answer in his heart. Therefore he got up and left the hall. He entered a secret room, took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda, and went into seclusion to heal his injuries. Swoosh. In a flash of white light, Ji Tianxing returned to the distorted space-time. He dragged his heavily injured body back to the bloody flame sacred tree. At this moment Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Yang Chao Qingyu, and the others had already sat down under the sacred tree and were in seclusion to heal their injuries. Ji Tianxing did not waste any time. He took out a few healing elixirs from his interspatial ring, as well as a large pile of origin stones and divine crystals, and began to heal his injuries. Although his divine body was already extremely strong and would not be easily injured. Even if he was injured, his self-healing ability was very strong and his recovery speed was much faster than ordinary people. However, his injuries were different this time. Half of it was because he had forcefully used the everlasting sky of turbidity several times in a short period of time, which resulted in a huge backlash. The other half of his injuries were because of the impact of the golden light from the self-destruction, which had damaged his divine body, divine core, and spirit. The golden light from the self-destruction of a peak divine king had released his lifetime's divine power and nomological laws. The injuries caused by the golden light were not ordinary injuries. They were Dao injuries. In other words, they were injuries that contained the will of the great Dao and the Dao of nomological laws. Such injuries were the most difficult to heal and recover from. If they were not treated properly and could not be healed completely, it would have a huge impact on one's divine Dao foundation. However, Ji Tianxing did not want to affect everyone's emotions. Therefore, he buried it in his heart and did not say anything. Chapter 3740. Hu Xinyue steered the divine worship and took 38 hours to return to Demon City. Previously, Luoho Divine King only needed a day to travel, but she needed a day and a half. This was normal. The two protectors and the second elder in charge of Demon City had already received Hu Xinyue's message and knew what happened in the Sky River Mystic Realm. They were full of worries, but they could not help. They could only strengthen Demon City's defenses to prevent Xuanji Grotto Heaven from attacking. Although the possibility of that was not high. However, Alliance leader Luoho's clone had died in the void. Now that the Demon Alliance was leaderless, they could only guard Demon City. They did not want to make any contributions, but they did not want to make any mistakes. At least, when Alliance leader Luoho's original body rushed back, Demon City would still be intact. This was the greatest contribution. After many checks, the divine worship returned to Demon City and landed outside the dazzling divine palace. Everyone was woken up by Hu Xinyue. They finished recuperating and left the divine worship. Ao Jinying, the fourth elder, and the fifth elder had only recuperated for a day. They did not seem to have changed much. However, Ji Tianxing's injuries were more than half healed. A day and a half had passed in the outside world. He had already been recuperating in the distorted spacetime for 2.5 months. He had consumed more than 3 billion worth of resources and elixirs. His physical injuries were basically healed. Even though his godhead and mind injuries had not recovered, his strength was still weak. However, on the surface he did not seem to have any injuries. Originally, Hu Xinyue, Ao Jinying, the fourth elder, and the fifth elder should have returned to their respective residences to recuperate. However, Ji Tianxing had said that he wanted to gather everyone for a meeting, so Hu Xinyue hurriedly sent a message to inform everyone. Ji Tianxing led Ao Jinying and the two elders to the Divine Palace's conference hall. 30 minutes later, the high-level experts of Demon Alliance gathered in the conference hall. Luoho Divine King was not present. Ji Tianxing sat on the main throne. Hu Xinyue was the person he trusted the most besides Luoho Divine King. She was arranged to stand beside the throne. In the spacious and bright hall, more than a dozen Divine King experts stood in 2 rows. Their eyes were focused on Ji Tianxing. Among the dozen or so God King experts, the 2 leaders were the left and right protectors. The rest were the 7 elders, the 2 leaders of the 12 heavenly kings, the chief of internal affairs, the patrol commander, and so on. Everyone had heard that Long Tian was hiding in the Demon City and had a close relationship with the Alliance leader. However, the crowd was only talking about it in private. Many of them had never seen Ji Tianxing before. As for Ji Tianxing, he had been in the Myriad Demon City for almost 2 months, but he had been living in seclusion. Other than Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying, he had not seen anyone else. It was his first time meeting the mysterious left and right protectors and the Minister of Internal Affairs, who was dressed like a rich man in the secular world. Upon seeing these 3 trusted aides of God King Rahu, he couldn't help but be stunned. He stared at the left and right protectors and the chief of internal affairs with a complicated expression. Tengwu Lan Chi Fu Ergu. It's you guys. Without a doubt, as God King Rahu's right-hand men and his most trusted aides, the 3 of them were old members of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. Ji Tianxing knew all of them. The left protector, Tang Wu, was the captain of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor's personal guards. The right protector, Lan Qi, was the commander of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's guards. As for the chief of internal affairs, Fu Ergu, he was also the old housekeeper in charge of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's internal affairs. The three of them were the trusted aides of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor. Ji Tianxing had been with them for more than 100 years and was very familiar with them. It was obvious that after Dark North took over the Dragon Emperor's position, many of the old members of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace stayed behind. However, Ophiuchus brought the three old officials and Ao Genieing out of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace and came to the Star Source continent to establish the Myriad Demon Alliance. This was not strange. In fact, it was within reason. Ji Tianxing was not surprised. He finally understood why the Myriad Demon Alliance could develop to such a scale in just a few hundred years. It could even threaten the ruling position of the mysterious grotto. With the peak god King Ophiuchus and the three old officials, it would be hard for them not to achieve great things. When Ji Tianxing recognized the left and right protectors and the chief of internal affairs, the three of them looked at Ji Tianxing carefully. Their expressions were complicated and their eyes were wet. When they heard Ji Tianxing calling out their names, the three of them trembled. Their hearts were filled with joy and excitement. They quickly stepped forward and stood side by side before Ji Tianxing and bowed. This subordinate greets the young lord. Young lord, I didn't expect to see you again after more than 1,300 years. We haven't seen each other for more than 1,000 years and the young lord still remembers our faces and names. What have we done to deserve this? We have heard the Alliance Master mention it before. We didn't dare to disturb the young lord and we didn't dare to confirm it. I didn't expect the rumor to be true. The young lord is really back. The three old officials looked at Ji Tianxing and recalled the past. Suddenly, all sorts of emotions welled up in their hearts and tears flowed down their cheeks. Ji Tianxing quickly got up and raised his hand, allowing the three old officials to rise. He walked towards the three of them with a smile on his face and greeted the three old officials with concern. The various elders, heavenly kings and patrol envoys in the hall looked at this scene with complicated expressions and started to discuss secretly. Is this the Long Tian who caused an uproar and shook the world? Why does he look so young? I wonder how strong he is. I heard that he killed many domain lords and high-level god kings along the way. His strength is definitely not ordinary. I heard that he was the last disciple of the heaven-sealing dragon emperor. The Alliance Master, the two protectors and the chief of internal affairs all call him young lord. Doesn't that mean the Alliance Master and the protectors are old officials of the heaven-sealing dragon emperor? Now that the Alliance Master is in trouble, this young Lord Long Tian wants to take charge of the situation. I wonder if he can do it? If he doesn't have the strength of a ninth heaven realm or a peak-level god king, I'm afraid he won't be able to take on such a big responsibility. After all, the Alliance has close to 30,000 members. Any order can determine the life and death of countless people. This is not a game. Everyone, don't worry. The young lord is an unparalleled talent. Previously in the Sky River Secret Realm, he fought Heartless God King, Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu alone and defeated them. Other than Ao Genieing, these elders and leaders did not know the true identity of Luo Ho Divine King and Long Tian's background. Now that they knew the identities of the Alliance Master, the Protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs, they were all shocked and found it hard to believe. At the same time, they were also suspicious of the young Lord Long Tian and did not dare to accept him to take charge of the situation. As for Ao Genieing, the fourth elder and the fifth elder, they had fought side by side with Ji Tianxing and knew that Ji Tianxing's strength was terrifying. Naturally, they were full of admiration and quickly vouched for him. Soon Ji Tianxing, the left and right protectors and the chief of internal affairs finished exchanging greetings. The three old officials returned to their ranks and stood respectfully. Ji Tianxing also returned to his seat and sat down before speaking. All of you are the mainstays of our alliance as well as the Alliance Master's trusted aides. I believe everyone has heard about what happened in the Sky River Secret Realm. Therefore, this king has gathered everyone to discuss the next countermeasures and plans. Chapter 3741. Ji Tianxing's expression was calm, and his tone was authoritative. Moreover, he had secretly used his divine spirit power, and his voice contained an intimidating authority. This was just a small method to show his strength and establish his authority, but it was very effective. Everyone in the hall was instantly intimidated by his divine spirit power, and a trace of respect grew in their hearts. Thus, the whispers and discussions disappeared. Everyone's expression was solemn and their postures were respectful. They no longer dared to discuss secretly through voice transmission. Ji Tianxing's gaze swept across everyone and he was very satisfied with this result. He continued, "The incident in the Sky River secret realm happened because of me. I believe everyone has heard that Alliance Master Luo Ho is helping me investigate and find a young man. It is also because of this that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor took the opportunity to set up an ambush in the Sky River secret realm. Although the Alliance Master and I were ambushed in the Sky River secret realm, the results were still very good. But overall the results of the battle were quite remarkable. The Xuanji Grotto had suffered even greater losses. Not only were the 30-odd divine kings gathered by the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor killed, but I also killed the Heartless Divine King and Tanyu. The Battle Dragon King and Qinyu are stranded in the void, and their current status is unknown. Even if they are lucky enough to survive, they will definitely be severely injured and will not be able to show themselves in the next few years. As for Alliance Master Luo Ho and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, they are fighting in the void. If one of them self-destructs, the other will definitely die." Hearing this, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they could no longer suppress the shock and panic in their hearts. Previously they had only heard of this but they had not confirmed this news. Now that they had received confirmation from Ji Tianxing, everyone panicked, and their hearts were burning with worry. Ji Tianxing waved his hand indicating for everyone to quieten down. He continued, "Everyone please calm down. Alliance Master Luo Ho and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor are both peak divine kings. How could they die so easily? In fact, those are just their external incarnations. Their true bodies are not currently in the dragon realm and they will not be affected. I have already contacted Divine King Luo Ho, and his true body will be back soon to take charge of the situation. Therefore there is no need for everyone to worry." Hearing this, the elders and leaders finally heaved a sigh of relief, dispelling the doubts and worries in their hearts. Ji Tianxing glanced at everyone's expressions and reactions, then continued with an expressionless face. "Currently Xuanji Wonderland and our alliance are like fire and water. We have to settle this once and for all. In the battle of the Sky River secret realm, the alliance was able to preserve its strength, but the Xuanji Grotto suffered heavy losses. Therefore now is the perfect time for our alliance to destroy the Enigma Grotto. In the next few months, please gather your forces, accumulate strength and await orders and dispatches at any time. Once Alliance Master Luo Ho's true body returns, our alliance's army will attack the mysterious paradise. At that time, our alliance will destroy the Xuanji Grotto heaven and take over the Star Source continent." Ji Tianxing's tone was sonorous, impassioned and rather inspiring. Quite a few elders and leaders felt their blood boiling, their faces filled with excitement and anticipation. However, there were also a few people who were expressionless. No one knew what they were thinking. After pausing for a moment, Ji Tianxing said in a dignified tone, "Today's meeting is over. I hope everyone will obey the order and prepare for war. Of course, I have to remind everyone. Since Alliance Master Luo Ho's true body is not here, I am the leader. Everyone better obey the order and not be passive and lazy. Otherwise, I will not be as lenient as Alliance Master Luo Ho." The last two sentences were a blatant threat. To many of the higher-ups, this kind of method was rather low-class and even disgusting. As expected, the expressions of several elders and leaders were a little strange. Their eyes flashed with mockery. However, Ji Tianxing ignored them. He waved his sleeve and ordered, "The left and right protectors, the Chief of Internal Affairs Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying stay. The rest of you please leave." Everyone said in unison, then bowed and bade farewell. After a while, many elders and leaders left the main hall in groups of 3 to 5. Ji Tianxing did not need to use his divine sense to know that those people must be talking behind his back and there might even be rumors. Only Ji Tianxing and the left and right protectors were left in the main hall. Immediately the hall fell into silence. At this time, Ji Tianxing's cold expression and eyes quickly dissipated. He looked at everyone and said calmly, "Since the Alliance Master is not here, the only people I can trust are the 5 of you. The left and right protectors, the Chief of Internal Affairs and Ao Jinying were all old officials of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace." Of course, they understood Ji Tianxing's meaning. The 4 of them bowed without hesitation and said, "Please give us your orders, young master." Hu Xinyue had joined the Myriad Demon Alliance later and was also trusted by Ji Tianxing. She was flattered. Thank you for your trust, young master. Hu Xinyue is willing to serve you even if it means going through fire and water. Ji Tianqing waved his hand indicating that everyone was at ease and said, I will not talk nonsense with you. Actually, I have sent a message to the Alliance Master. Unfortunately, there is still no news. There is no need to take any chances. The Alliance Master's incarnation has been destroyed. You must have other methods and means to contact the Alliance Master's original body. Go and do it later. The left and right protectors quickly said yes. At this time, the Chief of Internal Affairs, Fu Ergu, stroked his beard and said with a gloomy face, Young Master, the mysterious cave actually knew about our secret mission and took the opportunity to set up an ambush. Obviously, there is a spy in our alliance. This old servant thinks that we should eliminate the spy first, and then consider the plan to attack the mysterious cave. The left and right protectors also realized this point and quickly agreed. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, You really did not disappoint me. You thought of this point so quickly. You are not stupid. That's right. Before the Alliance Master and I left, we already guessed that there was a spy in our alliance. We planned to come back and eliminate the spy after the Sky River Secret Realm incident, but we did not expect the Alliance Master's incarnation to be destroyed. This matter will be handled by me now. The spy hiding in our alliance will not have a high status, but it will not be too low either. Those elders and leaders are all suspicious, but I have not been in the Demon City for long. I do not even know all of them, let alone the inside story. Therefore, I purposely ordered them to prepare for war. I said that we will attack the mysterious cave and unify the Starsource continent. I purposely threatened them to provoke them and make them reveal themselves. Next, the 5 of you will have to keep an eye on those people and see if they do anything strange. After listening to Ji Tianqing's explanation, everyone came to a sudden realization, and they all revealed knowing smiles. No wonder the young master did not discuss with us and recklessly suggested attacking the mysterious cave. The young master is indeed wise. He has the wisdom of the old master. The spy hiding in our alliance knows that the mysterious cave has suffered heavy losses, and we are preparing to attack the mysterious cave. That spy must be worried and will try to warn the mysterious cave to be on guard. This way we only need to keep an eye on them and we will be able to find a flaw. Young master, you have my respect. Chapter 3742. Everyone understood Ji Tianqing's idea, and they all agreed and admired his methods. Now that alliance leader Luo Ho was not here and he had just arrived at the Myriad Demon Alliance, he had no foundation or prestige to speak of. If he investigated the elders and leaders openly, it would definitely force the spies to hide and be more cautious. In that case, it would be very difficult to find out who the spies were. However, he took advantage of the fact that everyone did not understand him and was suspicious of him to act rashly and fatuously. Rashly proposing to prepare for war and attack the Xuanji Grotto was reckless. Threatening his subordinates in public before he had gained the loyalty of his subordinates was a foolish act. However, doing so could lower the spies' wariness and force them to contact the Xuanji Grotto, which would definitely reveal their flaws. Therefore, Ji Tianqing's method could be said to be violent and effective. Most importantly, this method could save time and would not cause internal strife in the Myriad Demon Alliance. Even if Alliance leader Luo Ho was present, he could not use this method. Only Ji Tianqing was suitable. The left and right protectors Hu Xinyue and the other 4 were not mediocre. In the blink of an eye, everyone understood the key and the reason, which was why they admired Ji Tianqing so much. Ji Tianqing continued, Hu Xinyue Ao Jining, the 2 of you have been seriously injured in the previous battle. Originally, you should focus on recuperating in seclusion. However, in order to eliminate the spies as soon as possible, I need more patience. After this matter is settled, you can focus on recuperating. Hu Xinyue and Ao Jining naturally had no objections. They quickly saluted and said, Please rest assured, young master. This is our duty. We will not shirk our duty. Left Protector Tang Wu frowned and thought for a while, then asked, Young master, you just ordered everyone to accumulate strength and prepare for war. Are we really going to attack the Xuanji Grotto after we eliminate the spies? The other 4 were also very concerned about this question. They all looked at Ji Tianqing with shining eyes, waiting for his answer. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, Actually, Alliance leader Luo Ho is not very interested in dominating the Starsource continent. However, the Xuanji Grotto took the initiative to attack and wanted to destroy the Myriad Demon Alliance, so he could only fight back. If we can't destroy the Enigma Grotto, they will definitely try to destroy us in the future. Therefore the order I gave just now is both true and false. You don't have to stop them, just let the people below prepare for the battle in peace. The most important thing right now was to contact Alliance Master Luo Ho's main body and see if he had any suggestions. In another 2 or 3 months, my injuries will be completely healed. If the time is right, we can even attack the Xuanji Wonderland. Hearing the confidence in his tone, everyone felt more confident. Their spirits were lifted and their blood was boiling. Next, they discussed some more details before taking their leave. After everyone left to carry out their respective tasks, Ji Tianxing left the conference hall and returned to the secret chamber. Thanks to Tang Wu Lanqi and Fu Ergu, I was able to control the Myriad Demon Alliance easily. Otherwise, if Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying are not powerful enough, it will not be easy to perform today's show. Back in the secret chamber, Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged and shook his head with a chuckle. No wonder Ophiuchus said that returning to the Myriad Demon Alliance is equivalent to returning home. That old man, why didn't he tell me the identity of the left and right protectors earlier? He even made me prepare several emergency plans. That's right. On the way back to the Myriad Demon City, Ji Tianxing had been thinking and planning how to eliminate the spies. At that time he did not know that the left and right protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs were on his side. He thought that since Ophiuchus was not in the Myriad Demon Alliance, he could only trust Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying. Therefore he came up with several plans at that time, all of which were more complicated and time-consuming. Until just now, when he saw that the left and right protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs were old officials of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, he suddenly felt confident. He immediately changed his mind and no longer cast a long line to catch a big fish. He directly carried out a simple, crude, and efficient plan. The plan had already begun and it was carried out by the left and right protectors and Hu Xinyue. He did not need to worry about it anymore. He just needed to wait patiently for the results. Taking advantage of this opportunity, what he needed to do was to enter the distorted space-time and heal his injuries as soon as possible. Swoosh! With a flash of divine light, Ji Tianxing entered the distorted space-time. There was only a divine pagoda left in the secret chamber. He returned to the blood flame sacred tree and meditated, silently thinking about how to heal his injuries. The injuries of the divine body have already healed. Now only the Tao injuries of the Godhead and Spirit are left. Ordinary divine pills and cultivation resources can't heal my Tao injuries at all. I only have 40% of my peak strength now, which is equivalent to an ordinary 9th heaven divine king. To heal my Tao injuries, the most effective way is to consume divine pills that contain the will of the Great Path. However, those are all top-grade king-level divine pills and they are of a specific type. Not to mention that I can't refine them now. The Myriad Demon Alliance's treasury probably doesn't have them. Ji Tianxing frowned as he thought about how to solve the problem. His brows were filled with worry. In his previous life as a peak divine king, he had once killed a peak divine king and suffered a Tao injury. Therefore he spent more than 10 years in painstaking efforts to refine a top-grade king-level divine pill to heal his Tao injuries. Now with his current strength he did not have the corresponding materials to refine the pills. If he wanted to heal his Tao injuries he would have to think of another way. After sitting for a long time he suddenly looked up at the blood flame sacred tree and thought to himself, is it possible for the power of the sacred tree to heal my Tao injuries? After he entered the dragon realm he had already killed over 100 divine king powerhouses. Among them, 30% were high-ranking divine kings. Naturally the blood flame sacred tree could absorb a huge amount of blood chi and spiritual energy after every kill. Now the blood flame sacred tree had already reached the mid-grade king level and was not far from the high-grade king level. The sacred tree had also grown by 80%, and its height was close to 30,000 feet. Unfortunately, this mid-grade king-level blood flame sacred tree was still unable to heal his Tao injuries. Ji Tianxing dismissed this thought and thought about the Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower and the Primordial Chaos Bell. These two top-grade king-level divine artifacts had extraordinary origins. Of course, they contained the will of the Great Path. The divine pagoda originated from the ancient phoenix divine bird. It was most likely a treasure like a clan's divine artifact. In particular, the Phoenix clan had been punished by the heavens and had disappeared without a trace. They were almost extinct. Ji Tianxing was 80% sure that the Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower could heal his Tao injuries. Unfortunately, this divine pagoda had become Jike's natal divine artifact. He could not use it to heal his Dao injuries. The primordial chaos bell was also an ancient divine artifact. It was also the Tao Tai clan's treasure. However, Ji Tianxing had just obtained it not long ago. He had been refining it and could not make it his natal divine artifact. He could not use the will of the great path in the primordial chaos bell to heal his Dao injuries. After thinking about it, these two top-grade king-level divine artifacts could not be used. The only top-grade divine artifact he had was the Heaven-Mending Pearl. The Heaven-Mending Pearl was also a divine artifact from the ancient times. The goddess of Jade Light had borrowed it from an almighty in the god realm to repair the five elements world. A divine artifact of this level would definitely be able to heal his Dao injuries. Most importantly, Ji Tianxing had already fused with the Heaven-Mending Pearl for more than 100 years. He had already refined it into his natal divine artifact. This method works. Let's give it a try. End of chapter. Chapter 3743. Ji Tianxing began to circulate his energy to heal himself. He activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and released a strand of sacred white light into his sea of consciousness. The sacred white light slowly swam in his sea of consciousness, cleansing his vast sea of consciousness and godhood. At this time, Ji Tianxing used the power of the heaven-mending orb for the first time to enter his sea of consciousness. He was careful and only released a strand of weak white light. He wanted to test its effect and see if there was any danger. After all, he usually used the sacred white light to purify other people's divine power and devour other people's godhood. He couldn't help but worry that the sacred white light entering his sea of consciousness would purify his power and devour his godhood. If that was the case, then it would be fun. Fortunately, that strand of white light swam in his sea of consciousness a few times without any accidents. Ji Tianxing felt that his consciousness was blurry and his head was a little dizzy, but other things were fine. At least his mind and power were not affected. This made him feel much more at ease and he slightly increased the sacred white light. After a while, his godhood and sea of consciousness were still fine. Only then did he feel completely at ease and continued to activate more sacred white light. As time passed, more and more white light entered his sea of consciousness. His consciousness also became more and more blurry and he was about to fall asleep. However, he still couldn't be sure whether the large amount of white light would harm him or whether the power of the heaven-mending orb could heal his Dao injury. Thus, he relied on his strong willpower and forced himself not to fall asleep. 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. After a full 6 hours, his sea of consciousness was completely filled with the sacred white light. And at this time his consciousness had already sunk into chaos. It was as if he was placed in a vast expanse of white clouds, and he could no longer stay awake. His willpower was also forced to the extreme and he could no longer resist the drowsiness and exhaustion. Helpless, he could only stop activating the power of the heaven-mending orb and quickly fell asleep. After an unknown amount of time he actually entered a dream in an extremely deep sleep. One must know that a peak divine king powerhouse like him never slept, and it was even more impossible for him to dream. Although he could rely on secluded cultivation to increase his strength and recover his mind and power. But in reality divine kings would also feel tired and tired. However, that tiredness, hardship and sleepiness were all completely suppressed by his strong willpower. But now, the sacred white light of the heaven-mending orb filled his mind, as if it had taken over his consciousness. He entered the most relaxed state, losing all vigilance, defense, and alertness. The sacred white light washed away the tiredness, fatigue, and sleepiness in the depths of his soul. So much so that he, a divine king powerhouse who had not slept for several hundred years, fell into a deep sleep for the first time and even had dreams. This dreamland was very quiet and peaceful. It was not chaotic or noisy at all. It was a boundless sea of clouds. He was standing in the sea of clouds as light as a feather, drifting with the wind. The vast expanse of white clouds was like cotton wool that was spread high up in the sky. It was extremely soft. Above his head was a clear blue sky. It was boundless, without a trace of impurities. In this dream, Ji Tianxing felt unprecedentedly relaxed and happy. It was as if his consciousness had been cleansed. Some of his memories, hatred, killing, and schemes had been eliminated. All of his negative emotions had disappeared. His heart was calm. He didn't think about anything, didn't ask about the future, and didn't recall the past. He seemed to have merged with heaven and earth, with the clouds and mist. He wanted to drift with the wind and wander between heaven and earth forever. At this moment he even felt that the sea of clouds and the sky were a warm embrace. He was willing to lie in the embrace of heaven and earth, carefree and in eternal sleep. Xianxia also didn't know how long he drifted in the sea of clouds. In this sky and sea of clouds, one couldn't see the passage of time at all. Could be a day or a year or even 100 years. Finally, Xianxia's soul became crystal clear, pure and flawless. He let out a long breath of turbid air, and a trace of thought appeared in his consciousness. Phew! I've never been so relaxed in my life as today. I don't need to think about anything and I don't have any emotions. There's only boundless peace. Drifting in the sky, it seems like there's no passage of time, as if it's close to eternity. Turns out that the sky is actually so beautiful. No wonder after 10,000 years, a million years, there's still no trace of the passage of time. Maybe this is the difference between heaven and earth. The earth has emotions, so it ages quickly, and the sea turns into mulberry fields. But the heavens are heartless, so there are no traces of time. These thoughts were naturally born from Xianxia's drifting in the sea of clouds for so long. Vaguely he seemed to have understood something. He had touched the peak of the divine way and was closer to the final step of the divine way. In his previous life he was a peak divine king, or even the strongest divine king in the world. He had already taken half a step. He was only a sliver away from breaking through the divine king realm, grasping the power of the heavenly Tao, and reaching the so-called God Emperor realm. And now he had comprehended the heavenly Tao and seemed to have reached the same state as before. He was one step closer to the peak divine king realm. In this life I must cultivate the heaven-vanquishing formation, break through to the God Emperor realm, kill those 5 God Emperors and take back the eternal heavenly book. The eternal heavenly book and the heaven-vanquishing formation are 2 parts. If I successfully cultivate these 2 divine techniques, I wonder what realm I can reach. Xianxia thought to himself. But at this moment he suddenly realized that the blue sky in front of him was no longer pure and flawless. The sky thousands of miles away was actually densely packed with black lines. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that they were cracks in space, and one could vaguely see the dark void. The originally peaceful sky was actually shattered. Xianxia hurriedly flew over to check the situation and thought to himself, strange, when my mind was calm and clear the sky was still perfect. Just as I thought of my hatred and future goals, a crack in space appeared in the sky. Could it be that the change in the sky is a sign of something? Xianxia knew that he was in a dream and also knew that the shattering of the sky was actually an illusion. But he could not help but think, was this a sign from the heavenly Tao? Was the heavenly Tao hinting to him that the heavens were emotionless and desireless, so that it could last forever and be flawless? Or perhaps, the sea of clouds in the sky represented his sea of consciousness, and the crack in space represented his Tao injury? Xianxia flew near the crack in space and carefully observed the pitch-black cracks, thinking about what to do. Whether it was a sign from the heavenly Tao or it represented his Tao injury, he felt that since there was such a change he had to find a way to resolve it. However, when he wanted to use his spatial divine ability to repair the crack in space, he found that he did not have a trace of divine power. Floating in the sea of clouds, he did not have a body, nor did he have a godhead. He was just a faint wisp of consciousness. He was filled with anxiety and helplessness, and could only watch as the crack in space spread in all directions, cutting the sky into pieces. Chapter 3744. In the beginning there were only a few thousand cracks in the sky and they covered an area of 100 miles. As time passed, Xianxia could only watch as the number and length of the cracks increased rapidly. 2 hours later there were more than 10,000 cracks in the sky. The shortest crack was a few hundred miles long, and the longest was tens of thousands of miles long. The sky within 100,000 miles was torn apart by the cracks in the sky. Through the densely packed gaps and holes he could clearly see the void outside. In the dark and cold void, there were raging void storms and vortexes nearby, and there were shining stars in the distance. As the cracks in the sky expanded, void storms constantly passed through the gaps and entered the space he was in. As a result, the sky tore and shattered faster, and the white sea of clouds was swept away by the void storms, disappearing without a trace. The void began to invade and expand, and the darkness continued to spread, engulfing this space bit by bit. Xianxia was extremely anxious and worried, but there was nothing he could do. He was not sure what the shattering of the sky and the void invasion meant. But he knew that it was definitely not a good thing. I have to do something to stop the shattering of the sky and the expansion of the void. Ji Tianxing thought silently, racking his brains to think of a way. However, he thought of more than a dozen ways, but none of them could be implemented. After all, he was just a transparent wisp of consciousness without a body or power. 2 hours, 4 hours. After 4 hours, Ji Tianxing despaired. He could not stop the shattering of the sky at all and could only watch as the void expanded. At this time, the number of cracks in the sky had already exceeded 100,000. The shattering of the sky and the area swallowed by the dark void had also exceeded a radius of 300,000 miles. It's over, something terrible must have happened. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself, feeling a little depressed. As expected. When he finished speaking, the cracks in the sky spread even faster and the void expanded even faster. Even the void storm became even more violent. Ji Tianxing watched this scene, but there was nothing he could do. He could only smile helplessly. Then he realized that the speed of the cracks in the sky and the expansion of the void had slowed down a little. This seems a little strange. A thought flashed through his mind as he suddenly realized something. Vaguely, he seemed to have grasped some clues. Therefore, he no longer watched the spatial cracks spread and ignored the void invasion and expansion. He began to recall what had happened 6 hours ago. After a few breaths, he suddenly grasped the key clue and seemed to have found the answer. In the past few hours, I watched as the sky shattered and the void expanded. Whenever I was agitated, worried, or anxious, the greater the fluctuation of my emotions, the faster the sky would shatter and the void would expand. When I felt helpless and calm, the speed at which the sky was shattering and the void was expanding also slowed down. So that's how it was. I understand now. At this moment, Ji Tianxing was suddenly enlightened. He dispelled the doubts and worries in his heart and calmly watched the sky shatter and the void spread. He forced himself not to worry, not to be anxious, and not to even think. He calmed himself down and his thoughts calmed down. In other words, he watched all of this with his own eyes, and there was not a trace of emotion in his heart. It was as if he had become an emotionless being, like the sky, the sea of clouds, or the stubborn rock. Even if the sky shattered and the void spread, it had nothing to do with him. This move was indeed effective. The rapidly spreading spatial crack and the rapidly expanding dark void actually slowed down greatly until it completely stopped. After 10 breaths, the spatial crack stopped growing and the void also stopped expanding. Ji Tianxing thought to himself that he had guessed correctly, but there was no longer any fluctuation in his emotions, not even a trace of happiness or excitement. Another 100 breaths passed and new changes took place in the sky and the void, which had been almost motionless. Under the invisible power of the will of the heavenly Tao, the numerous spatial cracks began to heal. The dark void was also shrinking and the previously invaded space was also returning to normal. Ji Tianxing still watched calmly as if it had nothing to do with him, without the slightest fluctuation in his emotions. A quarter of an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours. After an entire day, the hundreds of thousands of spatial cracks had all disappeared. The hundreds of thousands of miles of space that had been invaded by the void also returned to normal. The white clouds were still boundless, and the sky was a clear blue without any impurities. Only then did Ji Tianxing come out of his emotionless state. Then this mysterious and ethereal dream realm began to blur and dissipate. Ji Tianxing's dream realm ended, and his consciousness gradually awakened as he slowly opened his eyes. Looking around, he saw a familiar scene. It was still under the blood-flame sacred tree. Like his friends and family, he was sitting cross-legged in meditation, maintaining a cultivation posture. Nothing had changed except that a year had passed in the distorted space-time. That dream actually lasted for an entire year. I haven't slept for more than 100 years. That dream was really long. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and recalled that strange dream realm, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. I really have groundless fears and overstepped my boundaries. The shattering of the sky and the invasion of the void will naturally be stopped and repaired by the will of the heavenly Tao. I'm not the will of the heavenly Tao, but I'm actually more anxious than the will of the heavenly Tao. How laughable. Recalling his anxious and worried emotions in the dream realm, he couldn't help but laugh at himself. At this time he suddenly remembered that he was clearly using the heaven-mending pearl to heal his Tao injuries. So how did he fall into a deep sleep and even enter a strange dream realm? Thinking of the heaven-mending pearl, healing and the strange dream realm, he hurriedly used his mind to look inside, and checked the condition of the injuries in his sea of consciousness. What surprised him was that the sacred white light that filled his sea of consciousness had already completely disappeared. And the fine cracks on his divinity as well as those modeled Dao injuries had actually decreased by 20%. This result made him rather happy and also felt that it was inconceivable. The heaven-mending pearl can indeed heal my Dao injuries, and the healing speed is so fast. Just sleeping in the dream realm for a year and 20% of my Dao injuries were healed. At this rate, I only need 5 years of healing and my Dao injuries will be completely healed. 5 years in the distorted spacetime was only equivalent to 30 days in the dragon realm. Such an astonishing healing speed far exceeded Ji Tianqing's expectations. His mind was set and he no longer had a trace of worry. He thought to himself, with a divine item like the heaven-mending pearl, I won't have to be afraid of Dao injuries when fighting with a peak divine king in the future. After a moment he collected his thoughts and thought of another matter. I slept in the dream realm for a year and 7 days passed in the outside world. I wonder if Tang Wu Lanqi and the others have completed their mission to uncover the spy? He was thinking about this matter, so he ended his cultivation and left the distorted spacetime. Chapter 37:45. Ji Tianqing opened the door of the secret chamber and walked out. The 2 guards guarding the door of the secret chamber had not moved a single step in the past 7 days. Seeing him come out, one of the guards stepped forward and bowed. Young master, the great elder came 2 days ago. He seemed to have something important to tell you. However, after knowing that you were cultivating in seclusion, the great elder left. Now many people in the 10,000 Demon Divine Palace addressed Ji Tianqing as young master to show their respect and closeness. Ji Tianqing did not have any objections to this. After all, it was just a title. After listening to the guard's report, he thought to himself, Hu Xinyue came to find me yesterday? Could it be that the investigation has concluded? Or did something happen? With this thought in mind, he asked the guard, did the great elder leave any words? No. The guard shook his head. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He quickly left the secret chamber and rushed to Alliance Master Luo Ho's study. When he reached the door of the study, he asked the guard to inform Hu Xinyue to come to the study for a discussion. He entered the study and sat in the armchair behind the desk. He picked up a book and read it aimlessly. After about 15 minutes, the guard outside the door announced that Hu Xinyue had arrived. Hu Xinyue entered the secret chamber and saw Ji Tianqing sitting at the head of the table. She quickly bowed with a smile. Ji Tianqing gestured for her to close the door of the study. He then asked, I heard from the guard that you came to find me yesterday. Did you find out the results of your investigation? Hu Xinyue nodded and said, after a few days of investigation, we have already determined the target. However, we still need to observe further. However, I came to find you yesterday for another matter. We have contacted the Alliance Master through the divine message formation left in the underground palace. Ji Tianqing was immediately interested. He quickly asked, what did Alliance Master Luo Ho say? Hu Xinyue bowed slightly and said calmly, Alliance Master said that he already knows the process and results of what happened in the Sky River Mystery Realm. He had been forced to self-destruct at the final juncture of his battle with the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. Although he had sacrificed one of his avatars, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor had paid the same price. For a short period of time, the mysterious paradise would be without a leader. It would be difficult for them to stir up any trouble. The Myriad Demon Alliance, on the other hand, has you, young master, who can take charge of the situation. No matter how you look at it, we've won this battle. We can delay the advance of the mysterious paradise for now. As for you, young master, Lord Alliance head trusts and thinks highly of you. He said that with you overseeing Myriad Demon City, nothing will go wrong. Lord Alliance leader has also given a verbal order for everyone in the Alliance to follow your orders. You are the temporary leader of the Alliance. Anyone who disobeys your orders will be punished as a traitor. Clearly, the communication between Hu Xinyue and God King Luo Ho was not through a communication jade slip. Most likely, he had used a messaging array to establish contact with Luo Ho God King. Both sides had used a method similar to a projection to communicate in real time. Otherwise, God King Rahu would not have said so much and given so many instructions. I see. Ji Tianqing finally understood the reason for the self-destruction. He nodded slightly and said, Previously I was thinking that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor was one of the first batch of God Kings after the Antiquity Age. His strength should be very strong. He should not have been forced to self-destruct. I did not expect that this was all part of Ophiuchus' plan. He was ruthless and decisive enough. He actually used his own avatar to exchange for the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's avatar. In this way we have indeed won that battle. These words seemed to be said to Zhou Xian, but it was more like he was talking to himself. Zhou Xian only listened quietly and did not reply. After a while, Ji Tianqing looked at Zhou Xian again and asked, Lord Luoho has said so much to you. Did he tell you when his real body will return? Zhou Xian smiled awkwardly and answered, We have also asked Lord Alliance Head this question. However, Lord Alliance Head seems to have something very important and cannot leave in the short term. This. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked gloomily, What could be more important than the fate of the 10,000 Demon Alliance? He even destroyed the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's avatar. Is he not afraid that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's real body will return and destroy the 10,000 Demon Alliance? Zhou Xian looked embarrassed and answered, Therefore, Lord Alliance Head asked you to temporarily take over the position of Alliance Head and asked us to follow your orders. He trusts me so much that he actually left the entire 10,000 Demon Alliance to me. Ji Tianqing snorted coldly and said unhappily, I can help him protect the myriad Demon Alliance. If the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor really comes for revenge, it's not a big deal even if I have to destroy the Xuanji Utopia. However, I still have many things to do. Do I still have to guard the 10,000 Demon Alliance and wait for his return? Ji Tianqing complained gloomily. Zhou Xian felt awkward at first and did not know how to interrupt. However, when she heard the last two sentences, her eyes widened in shock and disbelief as if she had seen something unbelievable. She had heard Ji Tianqing say something similar before, but that was in front of many people. She did not take it seriously and thought that Ji Tianqing was just trying to boost everyone's morale. After all, she, Ao Jinying, and the others would often say something similar to express their anger towards the Xuanji cave. However, Ji Tianqing's expression and tone were so relaxed and casual. It did not seem like he was bluffing and there was no need to boost everyone's morale. Moreover, Zhou Xian could see that his confidence came from the bottom of his heart. He did not think that destroying the Xuanji cave was a big deal and did not treat it as a difficult task. That was why Zhou Xian was so shocked. She realized that she could not see through the young master anymore. Especially the young master's strength. It was obvious that he had improved by many times since the first time they met. She could not help but guess that the young master's strength had reached the peak Divine King realm as she and Ao Jinying had speculated. If not, how could he be so confident that he had the ability to destroy the Xuanji cave? Just as Zhou Xian was filled with thoughts and excitement, Ji Tianqing asked again, Zhou Xian, who else knows about Alliance Master Luoho's instructions other than you? Zhou Xian answered without hesitation, The left and right protectors and the general manager were with me at that time. They contacted the Alliance Master through the Divine Message Formation. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, That's good too. Since the most important people know about it, let's leave it at that for now. By the way, who are the two suspicious people that you have investigated? Zhou Xian answered again, One of them is the sixth elder. The other suspicious person is the leader of the 12 heavenly kings, Divine King Wanli. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, Since you have confirmed the target, why don't you take action? Even if I am in seclusion, you can detain them first to prevent them from escaping. Chapter 3746. Zhou Xian immediately revealed a difficult expression and explained with a bitter smile. Young master, we have been investigating the spies in secret and have not announced it to the outside world. Whether it is the sixth elder or the Wanli Divine King, they are both the mainstays of the alliance and are highly respected senior figures. In the absence of conclusive evidence, rashly detaining them would definitely cause chaos and turmoil. Now that the alliance is not stable, if these problems arise again, I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and sneered with displeasure. It's just a low-ranked elder and a hired thug. With me in the demon city, how can they overturn the heavens? This. Zhou Xian immediately fell into a dilemma. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, I know that the demon alliance is very united internally. There is also a deep friendship between the elders. Without solid evidence, it will indeed hurt feelings to detain them rashly. but this matter must be done and must be resolved as soon as possible. Otherwise, if it drags on for too long, who knows how many secrets will be leaked. Zhou Xian nodded and explained, "Thank you for your understanding, young master. The main thing is that we have not found solid evidence. But in the past few days, the sixth elder and the Wanli divine king have secretly sent out messages and arranged for people to make some arrangements behind our backs. Moreover, Alliance Master Luo Ho saved the sixth elder's life back then and took good care of him. In the past few hundred years, the sixth elder has been very loyal and conscientious. He has even blocked a few knives for the Alliance Master. As for the Wanli divine king, he was the current clan leader of the Golden Eagle clan. He joined the alliance after being invited by Ao Jining. For so many years, the 12 heavenly kings have been the messengers of the alliance. They have risked their lives countless times and made great contributions. Previously, Zhou Xian had still concealed some things. She only reminded Ji Tianqing in a roundabout way that the sixth elder and the Wanli divine king had special identities and were not suitable to act rashly. Seeing Ji Tianqing's unyielding attitude, she could only point out the identities of the two. Ji Tianqing immediately understood what she meant. He chuckled and said, "This king understands what you mean. One of them has a close relationship with the Alliance Master, and the other is Ao Jining's relative. Without knowing who the spy was, rashly attacking them would definitely chill their hearts. If one of them was a spy, the other wasn't. Or if it was found that neither of them were spies, they would certainly be disappointed in the 10,000 Demon Alliance after the incident and leave it. That's what you want to say, right?" Zhou Xian reluctantly squeezed out a smile and nodded. Ji Tianqing revealed a cold smile and said in a playful tone, "Because of this, it is very suitable for this prince to be the villain. Alright, go and get the left and right protectors and the head of internal affairs. I still have things to ask them." Zhou Xian did not say much. She quickly bowed and left the study. Ji Tianqing waited in the study for a while before Zhou Xian returned with the left and right protectors and the head of internal affairs. The three of them stood in the study and bowed to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not exchange greetings and went straight to the point. After a few days of investigation, the only people who are suspected of being spies are the sixth elder and the Wanli divine king, right? The left and right protectors and the head of internal affairs nodded at the same time. Ji Tianqing asked again, "With the evidence you have now, how sure are you that they are spies?" The left and right protectors and the head of internal affairs looked at each other. They were embarrassed and did not know what to say. Ji Tianqing stared at the head of internal affairs and said expressionlessly, "Fu Ergu, you say it." The chief of internal affairs, whose true form was a big yellow dog, was nicknamed Buttface. He bowed and said slowly, "Young master, based on the evidence we have, the sixth elder is 40% suspicious, and the Wanli divine king is 60% suspicious. Because the Wanli divine king not only privately conveyed information unrelated to work, but also secretly arranged people to leave the demon city without us knowing." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, "What about the people arranged by the Wanli divine king? Did you catch them?" The head of internal affairs bowed and answered with his head lowered, "On the shore of the Black Sea, the left protector Tang Wu personally caught them. However, none of us were prepared. The little eagle was caught and committed suicide without saying anything. We secretly stored his body and did not dare to take it out to question the Wanli divine king. We waited for the young master to make a decision." Ji Tianqing listened carefully and frowned at the same time. After listening to this, he asked for some clues and evidence. After the head of internal affairs finished, he fell into deep thought. The left and right protectors Fu Ergu and Zhou Xian did not dare to disturb him and waited patiently. After a long time, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a playful smile and said to himself, "This matter is a bit strange. I'm afraid the result is not what we expected." The four of them looked at him with puzzled expressions, not understanding what he meant. The left protector Tang Wu took the initiative to ask, "Young master, what should we do next? Continue to keep an eye on them?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said confidently and domineeringly, "No need to keep an eye on them. It's just a small matter, there's no need to drag it out for so long. Gather everyone in the main hall for a meeting. It's still the same people as last time, no one can be missing." Hearing this order, the four of them trembled and their faces were filled with shock. The right protector Lanqi asked in surprise, "Young master, are you going to lay your cards on the table and make this matter clear?" Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, "That's right. You'll know the answer soon. This. Lanqi and Tang Wu smiled bitterly. Fu Erge did not know whether to laugh or cry and could only scratch his head. What is this? Ji Tianxing glared at them and sneered, no matter which one of them is the spy, they are all very suspicious. None of them are clean. Don't worry, I won't wrong the loyal officials. Seeing that the young master's attitude was firm, everyone stopped trying to persuade him. Fu Ergu said earnestly, everyone don't hesitate. Go and pass on the order. We have to believe in the young master. The left and right protectors and Hu Xinyue nodded to show that they understood. Immediately, Hu Xinyue and Fu Ergu took their leave and sent a message to inform everyone of the meeting. Tang Wu and Lanqi followed Ji Tianxing and rushed to the meeting hall at a moderate pace. An hour later, Ji Tianxing sat at the head of the meeting hall. The left and right protectors, the chief of internal affairs, and Hu Xinyue stood in the middle of the hall. As for the elders, heavenly kings and the leaders of the inspectors, they were all late. Obviously, they had been carrying out Ji Tianxing's orders these days. They were actively preparing for war, accumulating strength and preparing to attack Xuanji Grotto Heaven. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianxing suddenly summoned everyone to discuss in the meeting hall. These elders and leaders could only put down their work and slowly gather in the hall. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3747. Many elders and leaders did not have a good impression of Ji Tianxing, the young master. In their eyes, this guy was too young. His abilities and methods were not strong, but he had a lot of troublesome matters that made everyone choke. Summoning everyone to the main hall for a discussion was simply torture. Could it be that he could not consider and decide on his own if there was a problem? Why did he have to summon everyone for a discussion? Was he so unworried and incompetent? In the hundreds of years that Alliance leader Luo Ho was in power, he would only summon everyone for a meeting when there was a major event. Usually he would not be seen for years. Ji Tianxing, who was sitting on the main seat, could clearly see everyone's dissatisfaction. But he did not care, because he was only temporarily in charge of the 10,000 Demon Alliance for Luo Ho. He would not stay or interact with these people for a long time. Of course, he did not care about their opinions. After everyone arrived, they stood in 2 rows. After whispering for a while, everyone quieted down and looked at Ji Tianxing, who was sitting at the head of the table. Ji Tianxing looked at everyone expressionlessly and said in a low and dignified tone, "Today I have summoned everyone to announce 2 things. The first thing will be announced by the great elder." Hu Xinyue naturally knew what to say. She quickly walked to the front of the 2 groups and turned to face everyone. She took a deep breath and said in a solemn tone with a calm expression, "Now I will announce Alliance leader Luo Ho's decree. When I am not in the 10,000 Demon Alliance, Long Tian will temporarily take over the position of Alliance leader and control all matters of the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Anyone who disobeys the order will be treated as a traitor." A sonorous and powerful voice echoed in the main hall. Everyone was stunned and looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. Their hearts were filled with shock. They could not believe that the Alliance leader trusted Long Tian so much and completely handed over the 10,000 Demon Alliance to him. Why should he? Even without Long Tian, the 10,000 Demon Alliance still had the left and right protectors and the internal affairs manager, as well as many elders and inspectors. Everyone knew what to do. They did not need Long Tian to tell them what to do. Moreover, although Hu Xinyue's announcement was shocking, it was not enough to convince everyone. Many people were discussing through voice transmission. Was this true? There shouldn't be any problems, right? Some of the more imaginative people even maliciously guessed that Long Tian had used some method to threaten the first elder, forcing the first elder to say these words and pass on a fake order. Ji Tianxing and Hu Xinyue saw everyone's reaction. Hu Xinyue secretly frowned and said in a dignified tone, "This is an order from the Alliance leader himself." At that time not only was I present, but the left and right protectors and the director were also present. Tang Wu, Lanqi and Fu Ergu hurriedly stood up and said righteously that this was absolutely true. Seeing that the 3 trusted aides of the Alliance master had confirmed this matter, the discussion in the hall gradually stopped. Everyone reluctantly accepted this result. After everyone quieted down, Ji Tianxing said in a low voice, "The first matter has been announced. Regardless of what everyone thinks, this king is now the acting Alliance leader. I believe that no one wants to disobey the order and become a traitor of the Myriad Demon Alliance, right?" The left and right protectors, the director of internal affairs and Hu Xinyue hurriedly bowed and said, We will follow the orders of the alliance leader. We will not be disloyal. The other elders, inspectors and leaders of the heavenly kings also hurriedly bowed and expressed their stance. Ji Tianqing slightly nodded and said, "Very good. Then this king will announce the second matter now. There is a spy in our alliance who colluded with the Xuanji Grotto and sold out the secrets of the Myriad Demon Alliance." Without any superfluous words, he directly stated it. The word, spy, instantly caused the hall to seethe, and it shocked everyone to the point they were dumbstruck and filled with astonishment. No one dared to believe that Long Tian, the acting alliance leader, would cause such a big trouble before he could consolidate his position and reputation. No matter whether there was a spy in the Myriad Demon Alliance or not, he should not have proposed to solve it at this time. After all, he could not convince the public. But Ji Tianqing had no scruples. Seeing that everyone was stunned, he coldly shouted in a dignified tone, "Shangyu Wanli, stand out." Shangyu was naturally the title of the sixth elder, and Wanli was the leader of the 12 heavenly kings. When Ji Tianqing mentioned that there was a spy in the Myriad Demon Alliance, their expressions and reactions were the same as the other elders. They were full of surprise and disbelief. However, their hearts were filled with worry and anxiety. The two of them were still thinking about how Long Tian would solve the problem and find the spy when he mentioned that there was a spy in front of everyone. But unexpectedly, before they were mentally prepared, Ji Tianqing called them out in front of everyone. While they were in a daze, the two of them were somewhat at a loss. Ji Tianqing did not repeat himself. He simply stared at the sixth elder and Wanli with a dignified face and cold eyes that were as sharp as swords. After a while, the two of them gradually calmed down. They walked out of the line and stood in the middle of the hall calmly. "Do the two of you know your crimes?" Ji Tianqing's gaze was like a solid ice blade that pierced the sixth elder and Wanli's divine king. His entire body emitted an invisible pressure that enveloped the entire hall. Not only were the sixth elder and Wanli's divine king intimidated, their hearts were filled with deep respect and fear. Even the others in the hall were enveloped by the invisible pressure. Their hearts tightened and they were filled with fear. However, the sixth elder and Wanli's divine king both resisted the enormous pressure. They raised their heads with an unyielding expression and righteously and vehemently retorted, "Acting alliance leader, what crimes have we committed?" The elders and leaders in the hall also reacted and cried out for the two of them. Acting alliance leader, the sixth elder and Wanli's divine king have always been loyal. Everyone has seen it. How can they be spies? Acting alliance leader, please be impartial and deal with it according to the facts. You can't act on impulse. Hearing the elders and leaders cry out for their innocence, Ji Tianqing's cold gaze swept over them. He sneered and said, "Since you trust Shangyu and Wanli so much, how about this? Later, when it's proven that they are spies, you will also be punished for the same crime. How about it?" Instantly, the elders and leaders shrunk their necks and gave up. It was true that they were loyal, but they didn't dare to take this risk. In the face of the powerful and domineering acting alliance leader, they could only swallow their anger. The sixth elder and Wanli's divine king were both stubborn and started to argue. "Acting alliance leader, you say that we are spies. Do you have evidence? If you don't have evidence, then you are framing us. Even if you are the acting alliance leader, we will resist to the end." Seeing their reactions, Ji Tianqing said disdainfully, "Of course I have evidence. This king disdains framing two nameless pawns like you. On account of the relationship between alliance leader Luo Ho and Ao Jining, this king will give you a chance to admit your crimes. If you admit your crimes, you will be given a lighter punishment. If you resist stubbornly, then don't blame this king for being merciless." Hearing this, Ao Jining, who had a complicated expression and was nervous in the hall, finally heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Ji Tianqing with gratitude. Unfortunately, the sixth elder and Wanli's divine king didn't appreciate it. Instead, they sneered contemptuously. Chapter 3748. Acting alliance leader is really impressive. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Acting alliance leader, don't show your hypocritical hypocrisy. Do you think we'll be grateful? I am innocent. No matter how eloquent you are, you can't frame me for no reason. Ji Tianqing had said so much, but he still didn't take out any evidence. This made sixth elder and Wanli divine king more and more arrogant. Even the elders and leaders in the hall were agitated by sixth elder and Wanli divine king's words. Their expressions were somewhat indignant. Everyone was muttering in their hearts. The old alliance leader was so famous. Why did he choose such a stupid successor? Today's matter was just the beginning. If Long Tian continued to cause trouble like this, the Thousand Demon Alliance would collapse sooner or later. Seeing that everyone was complaining, the atmosphere in the hall became more and more awkward and tense. Ji Tianxing finally gave up his last bit of kindness and said expressionlessly, "Very well. Since you are so stubborn, I will let you die knowing." After saying that, his gaze landed on the left and right protectors. He ordered in a deep voice, "Show me the evidence." Tang Wu and Lan Qi immediately stepped forward. They each took out a jade slip that was specially made by the Thousand Demon Alliance. The two of them turned to face everyone in the hall and said expressionlessly, "The evidence of 6th Elder Shang Yu and Wanli Divine King's crimes is here." Seeing this, the elders and leaders quieted down. They stared at the two protectors without blinking. 6th Elder and Wanli Divine King didn't show it on the surface, but their hearts were tense and worried. The two of them thought that they did things secretly, but they weren't sure how much information the other party had on them. Of course, their hearts were in a mess. Left Protector Tang Wu took the lead and said, 6th Elder Shang Yu has been in the alliance for more than 280 years. From a branch deacon to a branch master and then to an elder in the headquarters, it only took him 80 years. In these years, Shang Yu's achievements were built on the basis of his understanding of the continent's situation and information. However, Shang Yu insisted on not being in charge of the information hall. Instead, he kept close contact with the information hall and inquired about important information many times. The incident in the Sky River Secret Realm was confirmed to have been caused by the spies of the Alliance, which led to the Alliance Master, Young Master, and various elders falling into a trap. After that, our Alliance secretly investigated and monitored Shang Yu, and discovered that she had sent and received messages without permission, and it had nothing to do with our Alliance's affairs. Such things have happened frequently in the past 200 years. After Tang Wu finished speaking, Right Guardian Lan Qi also held a jade slip and read aloud. The leader of the 12 heavenly kings, Wanli, used his authority to amass wealth and secretly stole the League's property. He privately operated businesses in the outside world, formed a force that was only loyal to himself and planted spies in the League. After the incident in the Sky River Secret Realm, Wanli's secret activities were frequent, and there were many unusual movements. He also sent spies to secretly leave the Alliance, intending to go out and carry out missions. However, our Alliance is monitoring everything and capturing that spy by the Black Sea. The elders and leaders in the hall were in an uproar after listening to the evidence and crimes that the two protectors read out. They began to whisper to each other. Everyone's expression was very complicated. Some were angry, some were disdainful, some were confused, and some were disdainful. As for the 6th Elder and the God King of 10,000 miles who were originally worried after hearing this evidence, they immediately relaxed. The two of them became more and more confident. They looked straight at Ji Tianxing and sneered, "So this is the evidence that the acting alliance leader was talking about. Ah, what a joke. What is evidence? It can only be called evidence if there are witnesses and material evidence, and the time and process are clear. The evidence that the acting alliance leader was talking about is just a guess. This is the biggest joke in the world." The two of them not only mocked Ji Tianxing but also said to the elders and leaders, "My colleagues, you saw it with your own eyes. The acting alliance leader acted stupidly and instigated the alliance leader and a few elders to go to the Sky River Secret Realm to help him, and unfortunately fell into the trap of the Xuanji Grotto. Thus, the acting alliance master flew into a rage out of humiliation and sent people to spy on us, the loyal old officials. Without any real evidence, just some guesses, he wants to punish us. My colleagues, we are united and dedicated to the 10,000 Demon Alliance because the old alliance leader trusted and valued us. But the acting alliance leader's actions are really disappointing." Sure enough, a few elders and leaders were instigated, and their hatred for a common enemy was aroused. However, Ao Jinying, the 4th elder, and the 5th elder did not say a word and looked on coldly. First, it was because the left and right protectors and the great elder supported the acting alliance leader, and second, it was because they knew that the acting alliance leader's methods and strength were definitely not that simple. The atmosphere in the hall was getting weirder and weirder, and everyone's resistance was getting higher and higher. At this moment, Ji Tianxing slowly stood up. He stood in front of the throne and looked down at the 6th elder and God King Wanli. Suddenly he revealed a playful sneer. Shangyu Wanli, in your opinion, the results of this king's investigation are just some clues and guesses. It can't be used as evidence, right? The sixth elder and god king Wanli snorted and did not bother to answer. Ji Tianxing continued to sneer. Then do you know why this king is using such a simple piece of evidence to punish you in front of everyone? The sixth elder and god king Wanli were even more contemptuous and were about to mock him for being arbitrary. But Ji Tianxing did not give them the chance to speak. He said in a dignified tone, because this king still has many important things to do. I don't have time to dawdle with shrimp soldiers like you. Eradicating the spies in the Myriad Demon Alliance is only a small matter to this king. There's no need to scheme. This king only needs one target. Suspicion is enough. Does this king still need conclusive evidence? This is not a case in Immortal Kingdom. There is no need to pay attention to witnesses, evidence, and the course of events. This king suspects you, so this king will drag you out and personally find out the results. Hearing this, the sixth elder and god king Wanli's eyes widened in shock and anger. Like the other elders and leaders, they did not expect Ji Tianxing to be so tyrannical and act so arbitrarily in front of everyone. Without waiting for anyone to speak, Ji Tianxing said in a cold voice, "Do you feel that this is unfair? Ha ha, what qualifications do you have to ask for fairness? This king is the acting alliance master and you are just subordinates. This king is a peak god king and can easily crush you to death. To allow you to stand in this hall and give you the chance to admit your guilt is already the greatest mercy." As his voice fell, an incomparably powerful divine might that could suppress the world burst out from his body and enveloped the entire assembly hall. In that instant he was as dazzling as the sun in the sky, making it impossible for people to look at him directly. On the other hand, everyone in the hall was suppressed by the peerlessly terrifying divine might to the point their bodies were bent, their countenances were pale, and their entire bodies were trembling. Chapter 3749. At this moment, everyone in the main hall was filled with awe and fear. Previously, many people were still discussing and secretly looking down on Ji Tianxing as the acting alliance leader. They felt that he did not have the ability to control the Myriad Demon Alliance. But at this moment all the discussions and guesses were destroyed. The rumors that were spreading within the Myriad Demon Alliance were also destroyed. That's right, Ji Tianxing's way of doing things was very arrogant and domineering. But he had the qualifications. Not only was he the young lord of the old alliance leader, he was also a peak divine king. The youngest peak divine king in the entire Starsource continent. Previously, when he called sixth elder and divine king Wanli shrimp soldiers and crab generals, everyone was not convinced and felt very uncomfortable. The fact that Ji Tianxing was looking down on them made many elders and leaders feel as if they had been humiliated by him. But reality proved that he did have the qualifications. In the eyes of this young peak divine king, if everyone was not shrimp soldiers and crab generals, what were they? With Ji Tianxing's strength and status, he did not even need to go through so much trouble to get rid of the spies of the Myriad Demon Alliance. He only needed to secretly kill the sixth elder and the Myriad Mile Divine King, and then give everyone an explanation. Anyway, he was the acting alliance leader and a peak divine king. No one could do anything to him. Just as he said, he was willing to gather everyone for a discussion and give sixth elder and divine king Wanli a chance to admit their guilt. This was already very benevolent. A series of thoughts flashed through the minds of many elders and leaders. Instantly they felt regret and self-blame for their previous anger and contempt. Everyone was secretly rejoicing that they did not jump out to oppose the acting alliance leader and did not plead for mercy for sixth elder and divine king Wanli. Otherwise, their situation would be extremely awkward and their future would be bleak. The main hall was dead silent. Everyone's faces were pale and their foreheads were sweating. They did not dare to say a word. Until 10 breaths later, Ji Tianxing retracted his unparalleled divine aura and said expressionlessly, "I have always believed in one principle. When one's strength is equal or weaker than the other party, one needs to use schemes and tricks. When one's strength and power completely overwhelm the other party, using schemes and tricks is a waste of time. That's why I forced Shang Yu and Wanli to confess in front of everyone today. But don't worry, these are all decisions made by this prince after investigation and verification. We won't harm the innocent, but we won't let any villains off either." Hearing his explanation, the elders and leaders who were trembling in fear finally calmed down a lot. Just now, they were really scared that Ji Tianqing would go on a rampage and purge the 10,000 Demon Alliance. With his tyrannical nature, everyone in the main hall would probably suffer a calamity. After hearing this, everyone let out a sigh of relief. They knew that the acting alliance leader only wanted to get rid of the spies and did not want to cause chaos in the Myriad Demon Alliance. Therefore, today's incident would become a storm, but it would pass quickly and not implicate the innocent. At this moment, Ji Tianqing stared at God King Wanli with a sharp gaze. He asked in a deep voice, "Wanli, do you have anything else to say?" God King Wanli's face was deathly pale as he lowered his head. His face was covered in sweat and his heart was filled with fear and hesitation. He was silent for a long time and did not raise his head to answer. Ao Jinying, who was in the formation, could not stand it anymore. He glared at Wanli and scolded him through telepathy. "Wanli, are you stupid? What kind of person is the young master? How can you be so lucky? Quickly kneel down and confess." Wanli's body stiffened. He did not turn around to look at Ao Jinying's expression. After struggling internally for a moment, he finally knelt on the ground with a thud and kowtowed to Ji Tianqing to admit his wrongdoings. "Your subordinate Wanli confesses to the acting alliance leader. The crimes that the Right Guardian said just now are all true. For so many years, I have indeed used my authority to fill my own pockets and secretly steal the benefits of the alliance to run my own businesses. The Myriad Demon Alliance has treated me well and the old alliance leader trusted me even more. However, I have done such a thing that is worse than a beast. I have let down the old alliance leader. The businesses that I have secretly run and the benefits that I have stolen from the alliance have all been sent to the Golden Eagle clan. I have committed such a big mistake. I do not dare to ask for the acting alliance leader's forgiveness. Please punish me severely as a warning to others. However, I hope that the acting alliance master will not blame the Golden Eagle clan on account of their difficult situation and the fact that several thousand of their people are still homeless. They are innocent. The fault lies with me. I am willing to die to atone for my sins." Wanli Divine King finally admitted his crimes. As he admitted his crimes, he kowtowed and begged for mercy. His forehead hit the jade floor and his face was full of blood. After he finished saying the words "atone for my sins with death," he bowed deeply and did not get up. He secretly sent a telepathic message to Ao Jinying and exhorted, "In the future the people of the Golden Eagle clan will be entrusted to you. Do not let them know the truth and do not resent the Myriad Demon Alliance." Ao Jinying was already stunned. He stared at Wanli Divine King with a complicated expression. Obviously, he had been loyal to the Myriad Demon Alliance for hundreds of years and had never returned to the Golden Eagle clan. Regarding the Wanli Divine King's actions and deeds, he was completely unaware. The left and right protectors Hu Xinyue and many elders and leaders watched Wanli Divine King confess his crimes in court. They could not help but sigh with complicated expressions. Ji Tianqing was still indifferent. He said, "Wanli Divine King, you have filled your own pockets and stolen the benefits of the alliance. You have secretly supported the Golden Eagle clan and did not collude with the Xuanji Grotto. Moreover, Wanli Divine King stopped at the edge of the cliff and confessed his crimes in time. However, this is a betrayal of the Myriad Demon Alliance. If he is not punished, it will not be enough to face justice." Everyone gathered their thoughts and looked at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression. They were waiting for his decision. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and then announced expressionlessly, "Wanli Divine King is stripped of his position as leader. All his rewards and properties will be confiscated. He will be punished with 100 thunder whips. From today onwards he will be imprisoned in the Black Pool. 1 year later he will be expelled from the Myriad Demon Alliance." Wanli Divine King, who was already prepared to die, suddenly trembled and kowtowed to express his gratitude. "On behalf of the Alliance leader's benevolence, we thank the Alliance leader for not killing us." Ao Jinying, the deputy leader of Wanli Divine King, and a few elders also bowed and thanked Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's expression was indifferent. He waved his hand and said, "Take him away." Immediately, a few mighty and solemn guards stepped into the main hall. They tied Wanli Divine King with chains and took him away to be punished. Although the chain was a king-level low-grade divine artifact, to Wanli Divine King, it was more symbolic than practical. If he struggled with all his strength, he could definitely escape. But everyone knew that he had no reason to resist and escape. The main hall returned to silence. The left and right protectors and the chief of internal affairs were a little confused by Ji Tianxing's decision. But the three of them remained silent. They would ask later. Next, it was Sixth Elder's turn to confess his crimes. Ji Tianxing looked at Sixth Elder expressionlessly and said coldly, "It's your turn." Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3750. As Ji Tianxing's voice rang out, everyone's gaze gathered on the Sixth Elder. Just now, Ji Tianxing's momentum was frightening. In the end, after godly King Wanli confessed, he was not executed. Stripped of his position and rewards, and expelled from the 10,000 Demon Alliance, this was a matter of course. Traitors should be treated this way. The real punishment was only 100 lightning lashes and a year of imprisonment. This punishment for godly King Wanli's crime was simply too lenient. To describe Ji Tianxing's way of doing things, it was raised high, gently dropped. This made the elders and leaders feel that although the acting alliance leader was overbearing, his nature was kind and benevolent. As long as Sixth Elder was willing to lower his head and admit his guilt, his attitude would be more sincere. Therefore, several elders and leaders who had a good relationship with Sixth Elder transmitted messages to persuade him to admit his guilt. Sixth Elder, don't be too stubborn. Admit your guilt. Although the acting alliance leader is overbearing, his heart is benevolent. You also saw the result of godly King Wanli's punishment. Sixth Elder, it's great that you can change your mistakes. As long as you admit your guilt, we will help you plead for leniency. However, Sixth Elder turned a deaf ear to everyone's persuasion. Even if Ji Tianxing's sharp gaze was fixed on him, he stubbornly straightened his body and closed his eyes. The seat is innocent. Facing Ji Tianxing's questioning and the persuasion of his colleagues, he only had these 4 words. Sonorous, forceful, firm and stubborn. Everyone was in an uproar. Many people's expressions changed. Those elders and leaders who had a good relationship with him, seeing that he did not appreciate it, basically shut their mouths. Only 2 people were still transmitting messages to persuade him. However, they could not change his mind and decision. Everyone felt that Ji Tianxing was benevolent and magnanimous, but Sixth Elder did not think so. He was lenient towards godly King Wanli because godly King Wanli was only greedy for profit. Moreover, he had his reasons and did not really betray the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Moreover, godly King Wanli and Ao Jining are brothers. Ao Jining's relationship with him is not shallow. He more or less has to give Ao Jining some face. But me? What relationship do I have with him? He can tolerate godly King Wanli stealing benefits, but he will never tolerate a spy like me. Once I admit that I am a spy sent by the mysterious grotto. No matter how much I plead, no matter how much I act, he will still sentence me to death. Sixth Elder secretly thought he could not help but sneer. Although he did not have much contact with Ji Tianxing, his eyesight was very sharp. Everyone was deceived by Ji Tianxing, but he wasn't. As expected, Ji Tianxing, who was sitting on the throne, stood up once again. This time Step Tianxing step by step. His eyes were as deep as the starry sky, and his gaze was as sharp as an ice sword, firmly locking onto Sixth Elder's divine soul. An invisible aura shrouded the Sixth Elder, suppressing him until he could not move. They of course. Everyone knew that Ji Tianxing was truly infuriated. Most likely there would be a shocking move in the next instant. Do you think that this king wasted so much breath that as long as you don't confess, this king can't do anything to you? At this moment you're probably still looking down on godly King Wanli in your heart, mocking him for being cowardly and ignorant, to actually yield so easily. Do you think that you're very smart thinking that you saw through this king? Ji Tianxing walked towards Sixth Elder step by step, his face like frost as he smiled coldly. The temperature in the hall immediately dropped to freezing point. Frost visible to the naked eye formed on the ground. An invisible, piercing, cold, killing intent also enveloped Sixth Elder, making everyone's hearts palpitate, and they all subconsciously retreated. Sixth Elder clenched his fists tightly, gritting his teeth, his entire body trembling. He endured the tremendous divine might and killing intent, but he relied on his incomparably tenacious will and stubbornly held on. At this moment he suddenly felt some regret. If he knew that Long Tian was so terrifying, he would not have come to the assembly hall today. He would have escaped Myriad Demon City in advance, and perhaps he could still preserve his life. But now he was already in a desperate situation, and there was absolutely no possibility of escape or survival. Hoo. The acting alliance leader's strength is indeed very strong, but if you want to use your aura to make me confess to a crime that doesn't exist, please forgive me for not being able to do it. Sixth Elder's body became more and more crooked, but he endured the pain, gritting his teeth as he coldly shouted. Ji Tianqing suddenly laughed, and his smile was full of ridicule and contempt. He said, I really don't know what you have to maintain your final stubbornness and stubbornness. Is it ignorance? Don't you know that there are several magical powers in the world that can search the soul's memories? Unfortunately, this king has mastered it many years ago, and there is more than one kind. The moment these words came out, Sixth Elder's expression changed instantly. His eyes widened, revealing a deep sense of fear. He finally understood what Ji Tianqing's trump card was. Moreover, he also knew what Ji Tianqing was going to do next. His secret was about to be exposed. The various elders and leaders in the hall also changed their expressions dramatically, and they were filled with shock. Then everyone's expressions returned to normal, and many people revealed bitter smiles and expressions of admiration. No wonder the acting alliance leader is so reckless and overbearing. It turns out that he already has the whole situation under control. Hoo. In front of the soul-searching magical power, there are no secrets to speak of. No wonder the acting alliance leader is so fearless. I finally understand. For the acting alliance leader, we are just small fries and not worth wasting his time on. The young master is using practical actions to teach us that in front of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks are a joke. These complex thoughts flash through the minds of more than a dozen elders and leaders at the same time. Only the left and right protectors, the chief of internal affairs and Hu Xinyue remained calm. Obviously they already knew. Soul-searching magical powers were actually not rare, and many top powerhouses could cultivate them. Just like the external incarnation, no one felt that it was mysterious or shocking. However, the number of experts who could cultivate this kind of divine ability was ultimately only a small portion of the population. Everyone did not know Ji Tianqing, and he had never shown this ability. Therefore, when he revealed his trump card at this moment, everyone was so shocked. At this moment, Ji Tianqing finally made his move. He slowly stretched out his right palm and pressed it toward the top of the sixth elder's head. His movements were neither fast nor slow, but it was like a huge mountain pressing down on the sixth elder, causing him to go limp and about to collapse. Stop. I plead guilty. I will confess everything. Please have mercy on me, acting alliance leader. I am willing to plead guilty. The sixth elder roared with a ferocious expression, and it was obvious that he was extremely terrified. However, Ji Tianqing's palm did not stop, and it pressed down steadily and forcefully. You want to plead guilty now? No need. Swoosh. As his voice fell, endless black light surged out of his palm and entered the sixth elder's mind. He was terrified and struggled desperately. However, Ji Tianqing had already suppressed and sealed him, so how could he move? Chapter 3751. If they were outside the demon city, Ji Tianqing would have brandished his sword to kill the sixth elder. The sixth elder would have resisted with all his might. Even if he was killed, he would at least be able to struggle a little. But now in the main hall, the Demon League's higher-ups were all present. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Ji Tianqing had all the advantages and righteousness. He had suppressed the sixth elder before he even made a move. No matter how many tricks he had up his sleeve, how could he be Ji Tianqing's opponent? One must know that the reason he could become the Demon League's sixth elder was because of his unparalleled wisdom and his schemes. As for his battle strength, he was only a 7th-stage God King. He could not be compared to God King Wanli. God King Wanli was the leader of the 12 heavenly kings. To put it bluntly, he was the leader of the Demon League's hired thugs. He was able to climb to that position because he was at the peak of the 8th stage and had made many contributions in the past few hundred years. Someone like the 6th elder was more like a civil servant. Suppressed by Ji Tianqing's divine aura, he was like a little chick held in Ji Tianqing's hand. Swoosh. A cold and mysterious black light rushed into the 6th elder's mind in an overbearing manner. It took over his mind without restraint and wrapped around his godhead. The 6th elder was furious and unyielding. His godhead struggled violently to resist the black light's invasion. But the black light was too fierce and overbearing. It gradually penetrated his defense and invaded his godhead. Naturally, his strength became weaker and his consciousness became more and more blurred. After 20 breaths, his consciousness fell into unconsciousness and he no longer had the strength to resist. Ji Tianxing read the sixth elder's memories and muttered to himself, "He can actually last 20 breaths under this king's soul-searching ability before fainting." As expected of a spy from the mysterious paradise, this person's mind and willpower far surpass god kings of the same realm. The main hall was silent. Everyone stared at Ji Tianxing and the unconscious sixth elder. Hearing Ji Tianxing's mutterings, everyone's expression changed slightly. They exchanged glances and transmitted messages. Obviously, Ji Tianxing had already found out the results, which was why he said that. Everyone gradually understood that the sixth elder was not a loyal official who had been wrongly accused, but a spy who had concealed himself very deeply. After about 30 breaths, Ji Tianxing withdrew his palm and stopped casting. The sixth elder, who was in a coma, lost his support and fell to the ground with a bang. Ji Tianxing turned around and returned to his throne. Under everyone's expectant gazes, he announced the results. Sixth elder's real name is White Night Wolf, a member of the Profound Secrets Grotto, a direct descendant of the Heartless Divine King. This person had always hidden himself very deeply. Other than the Heartless Divine King and the Battle Dragon King, almost no one knew him, so he was a professional spy and scout for information. Back then, the rapid rise of the Myriad Demon League aroused the vigilance of the mysterious paradise. The Heartless Divine King sent this person to infiltrate the Myriad Demon League as a spy. Hearing this result, everyone was extremely shocked. They looked at the White Night Wolf with eyes filled with anger. Even though several elders and leaders had a good relationship with the White Night Wolf in the past. However, in front of major issues, these elders and leaders were definitely not muddle-headed. Especially when they had previously pleaded for mercy for the White Night Wolf and even used voice transmissions to persuade him. Thinking about it now, they were all fools who had been deceived and deceived by the sixth elder. All of them felt ashamed and angry. The atmosphere in the hall was somewhat awkward. Those elders and leaders who had previously spoken up for the White Night Wolf were all hesitating on whether they should apologize to Ji Tianxing. After all, their previous behavior was very unbearable. They had been disrespectful and belittling of the acting alliance leader. However, reality had proven that the acting alliance leader was wise and mighty. He was a pinnacle expert with a discerning eye, and they were all fools who had been fooled. Should they apologize to the acting alliance leader? This was to prevent the acting alliance leader from bearing a grudge and settling the score with them in the future. Fortunately, Zhou Xian opened her mouth in time to ask, easing the awkward atmosphere. "Young master, since the truth has been revealed, then everything can be explained. The old alliance leader saving the White Night Wolf should not be a coincidence, but a plan that the White Night Wolf had planned for a long time, right?" After the White Night Wolf entered the alliance, he understood the situation of the mainland very well. He often made suggestions and made contributions. "I'm afraid that the Xuanji Grotto heavens secretly helped him in this, right?" Ji Tianxing looked at her with some admiration and nodded. "That's right. This person was originally good at scheming and was extremely shrewd. With the help of the Xuanji Grotto heaven, of course, he could make great contributions. It was also because of his suggestions and unparalleled wisdom that he quickly gained the old alliance leader's trust." As expected, Zhou Xian replied with an indignant expression. She glared at the White Night Wolf coldly. At this moment, the chief of internal affairs walked out with a hunched back. He asked Ji Tianxing for instructions. "Young master, the truth is out. How should we deal with the White Night Wolf? Please decide, young master." Ji Tianxing announced expressionlessly, "As for the spies and informants of other factions, the alliance has the advantage in numbers and will never be able to truly ban them. However, this is not a reason to be lenient. He must be sentenced to death to intimidate the evildoers and awaken the alliance members. The White Night Wolf harbored evil intentions and attempted to overthrow the alliance. Heaven and earth cannot tolerate this. In 3 days he will be executed by 1,000 cuts in front of everyone in the city square. The left and right protectors will carry out the order." Compared to the punishment of the Wanli Divine King, this punishment was simply cruel and cold. The many divine kings and leaders in the hall had long expected that Ji Tianxing would not forgive the White Night Wolf. However, no one expected that Ji Tianxing would be so furious and use such a horrifying punishment. For a moment, everyone looked at each other and discussed secretly through voice transmissions. Was this acting alliance leader a benevolent lord or a ruthless and cruel lord? No one had an answer in their hearts. A layer of fear covered each other's hearts. Fortunately, the chief of internal affairs, Fu Ergu, spoke in time and pointed out the pros and cons in one sentence. If not for the White Night Wolf betraying the alliance, the old alliance leader, young master, and a few elders would not have fallen into an ambush in the Sky River mystic realm. The old alliance leader's avatar would also not have been buried in the cosmos. Only by using extreme punishment on this fiend can the hatred in our hearts be dispelled. Hearing this, the elders and leaders recalled that it was indeed the White Night Wolf who leaked the secret that caused the old alliance leader to lose an avatar. How painful of a loss was this? Even if they hacked the White Night Wolf into 1,000 pieces, it was an irreparable loss. Thinking of this, everyone felt much better. They could also accept the White Night Wolf's tragic end. The left and right protectors stepped out of the ranks at the right time and bowed to Ji Tianxing. This subordinate obeys young master's orders. After bowing, the two of them personally sealed the White Night Wolf's divine power and divine spark. Then they took him away and locked him in a prison to await the execution 3 days later. Ji Tianxing did not say anything. He only surveyed the surroundings and glanced at everyone before getting up and leaving the assembly hall. He was very clear that if a superior wanted to control power in a short period of time and gain the respect of his subordinates, he had to use such thunderous methods. Bold and open and aboveboard and shocking people's hearts. If he blindly played with schemes, he would fall into a disadvantageous position instead. It would only make his image appear dark and gloomy. It would definitely not be as bright and heroic as the image of an expert. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3752. Today's meeting came to an end. The elders and leaders were stunned in the hall for a long time before they left with complicated expressions. Of course, everyone left in groups of 3 to 5 and could not help but discuss for a long time. What happened in the main hall today was simply too shocking. The elders and leaders finally understood what kind of strength and methods Long Tian, the acting alliance leader, had. In the past, everyone looked down on this acting alliance leader and was not convinced. They could not understand why the old alliance leader let him be the acting alliance leader temporarily. But now, everyone was convinced by Ji Tianxing and no longer had any objections. In fact, when they thought of his terrifying strength and his divine might that could suppress everything, everyone felt a faint fear. In addition, the sixth elder and the Wanli Divine King were also the targets of discussion. The Wanli Divine King's punishment was lighter and he was very lucky. As for the sixth elder, the spy, he had only himself to blame for his miserable end. Ji Tianxing returned to the alliance leader's study and waited patiently. Not long after, Zhou Xian, the chief of internal affairs, and Ao Jinying came to find him. After everyone waited for 15 minutes, the left and right protectors also came to the study. The few people in the study were Ji Tianxing's trusted aides. The meeting had ended, but everyone had to secretly gather together. Clearly there was something to discuss. Seeing the left and right protectors enter the study, Ji Tianxing asked, "Is it done?" The left protector, Tang Wu, hurriedly cupped his hands and answered, "Young master, according to your instructions, White Night Wolf has been locked up and suppressed with a formation. He will be executed in 3 days." The right protector, Lan Qi, said firmly, "Don't worry, young master. The prison is heavily guarded both inside and outside. We will personally guard it later. There won't be any accidents." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a smile, "No need to be so nervous. When I used the soul-searching ability on him, I already severely injured his soul. He will be unconscious for at least 10 days. Tang Wu smiled and answered, "It's better to be safe than sorry. It's safer for this subordinate to personally guard the prison, in case White Night Wolf's accomplices take the opportunity to break into the prison to save people." Lancy grinned coldly and said expectantly, "I wonder if the White Night Wolf has any accomplices. If someone dares to save him, then we can catch them all in one fell swoop." Ji Tianxing just smiled and didn't say anything. The study room quieted down. At this time, Ao Jinying bowed deeply to Ji Tianxing and said sincerely, "Thank you, young lord. On behalf of Wanli and the Golden Eagle tribe, I thank young lord for sparing my life." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and explained, "I'm just dealing with it impartially. God King Wanli's crime doesn't warrant death, and since he admitted his wrongdoings on his own accord, It's only natural for him to be given a lighter punishment. At the mention of God King Wanli, the chief of internal affairs asked seriously, "Young master, previously in the main hall we wanted to ask you this. Since you've decided to remove God King Wanli from his position and expel him from the Myriad Demon League, why did you imprison him in the Black Pool for a year?" Zhou Xian also nodded and asked doubtfully, "First imprison him for a year, then expel him from the Myriad Demon League. Young lord, isn't this a little unnecessary?" Audiobook and the left and right protectors didn't say anything, but they had the same thought. They all looked at Xianxia. Xianxia knew that they were puzzled, so he explained with a smile. "Don't forget, I'm talking about. The Wanli Divine King was imprisoned in the Black Pool for a year. A year is a short time, but it's enough for a lot of things to happen. For example, attacking the Xuanji Grotto Heaven and seizing the position of the overlord of the Star Source continent." Everyone was shocked and exclaimed in disbelief. "Young lord, are you really going to attack the Xuanji Grotto Heaven? Could it be that when you asked everyone to prepare for war, you're really going to fight?" "I understand now. Since young lord wants to attack the Xuanji Grotto Heaven, our league naturally needs a large number of experts. You didn't expel God King Wanli from our league temporarily because you want him to atone for his crimes by meritorious service?" The chief of internal affairs, Fu Ergu, guessed Xianxia's thoughts, and everyone was enlightened. Xianxia also nodded with a smile and said, "Ergu is right. Although God King Wanli made a mistake, it's not an unforgivable crime. Our war with the Xuanji Grotto Heaven is imminent and we're lacking manpower. A peak 8th Heaven Divine King like him was truly a force that was hard to come by. I believe that he'll be happy to atone for his crimes by meritorious service, right?" The left and right protectors, the chief of internal affairs, and Zhou Xian all smiled and nodded in agreement. Audiobook was even more grateful. He quickly bowed and thanked Xianxia. "Thank you, young lord. Wanli made such a big mistake, but young lord still gave him a chance to turn over a new leaf. This is Wanli and the Golden Eagle tribe's fortune. Rest assured, young lord, whether he agrees or not, I'll persuade him to make good use of this opportunity." Xianxia nodded slightly and didn't discuss this matter anymore. The smile on his face disappeared and his expression became solemn. He said earnestly, "I believe you already know that I returned to the Dragon Realm this time to visit Master and my friends, and also to find my son Wuhan. Now that Master has passed away, I've also met everyone. Next, I should leave the Star Source continent and go to other continents to find Wuhan. But now that things have developed to this point, the Myriad Demon League and the Xuanji Grotto Heaven are like fire and water. As long as Ophiuchus's true body doesn't return, I can't leave. Otherwise, if the Xuanji Grotto Heaven takes the opportunity to attack, the Myriad Demon League will be in danger. So, I can only choose to take the initiative and destroy the Xuanji Grotto Heaven to eliminate this huge danger. Only after this matter is over can I leave with peace of mind." Hearing his words, everyone understood his thoughts and plan. They all nodded to express their understanding. No wonder young lord wants everyone to prepare for war. Since that's the case, let's destroy the Xuanji Grotto Heaven in one go. Originally, the old leader and we didn't have any intention of conquering the Star Source continent. We just wanted to have a place to settle down and shelter from the shadows. But now that things have developed to this point, we can't stop fighting just because we want to. Even if we don't take the initiative to attack, the Xuanji Grotto Heaven won't let us go. Young lord, don't worry. We'll definitely prepare for war. We'll gather people as soon as possible and make all the necessary preparations. Before, Xianxia was worried that everyone would object and think that this decision was too rash and impulsive. But now, since everyone agreed, he didn't need to waste his breath to explain. He only reminded everyone, "I killed the Heartless Divine King and Tanyu. The Battle Dragon King and Qinyu are missing. Even if they're alive, they're heavily injured. The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's clone has been destroyed. Even if his true body rushes back to the Xuanji Grotto Heaven, it'll still take 1 or 2 months. So, this is the best opportunity for us to attack the Xuanji Grotto Heaven. Everyone, please gather people as soon as possible, recover from your injuries, and do a good job of gathering information. In short, the sooner we act, the better." Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3753. Wars in the mortal world were about rations before troops and horses were mobilized. In the divinity realm there was no such thing as rations. Therefore, before the war began, the most important thing was to gather information. Ji Tianxing was confident that the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor's true body was not in Xuanji Paradise. 2 of the 4 powerful generals had been killed. The other 2 were also in the void, their whereabouts unknown. They were either dead or injured. No matter how one looked at it, Xuanji Paradise was at its weakest. Could be easily destroyed. However, Ji Tianxing would not underestimate the enemy. He knew very well that Xuanji Paradise had controlled the Star Source continent for more than 20,000 years. They were not that simple. No matter what, Xuanji Paradise had hidden methods and forces. If he was too confident and careless, problems might arise. Therefore, it was extremely important to gather information. He had to find out how strong Xuanji Paradise's defenses were and how many top experts they had. He could not carry out this mission himself. He could only leave it to the left and right protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs. He believed that the Myriad Demon Alliance had operated on the Star Source continent for so many years. They must have a corresponding intelligence network. Xuanji Paradise could plant spies in the Myriad Demon Alliance. They held high positions and knew a lot of confidential information. However, the Myriad Demon Alliance would also plant spies to infiltrate Xuanji Paradise and gather as much information as possible. Sure enough, when they heard his order, the left and right protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs bowed and said, "Yes, sir." "Don't worry, young master," the Minister of Internal Affairs said confidently. 400 years ago, our alliance began infiltrating the Enigma Grotto to prevent a situation like this from occurring. This time we will do our best to gather information. Even if we have to expose our spies, as long as we can destroy Xuanji Paradise, it will be worth it. I will give you an answer within half a month at the latest. Obviously, the Chief of Internal Affairs understood Ji Tianxing's intentions. He carried out the order with the attitude of a final battle. The spies in Xuanji Paradise were the intelligence network that the Myriad Demon Alliance had invested the most in for hundreds of years. Who would be willing to expose them until the very last moment? Ji Tianxing was very pleased with the Internal Affairs Chief's attitude and determination. He nodded his head to express his appreciation. After the meeting ended, everyone left the study. Ji Tianxing also returned to the secret chamber. Following this, the left and right protectors, the Chief of Internal Affairs, and the others all had to carry out missions. Ao Jinying and Hu Xinyue also needed to recover from their injuries as soon as possible. Ji Tianxing's mission was the same. He needed to heal his Dao injuries as soon as possible. In the gloomy secret room, the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes tower floated quietly, flickering with a faint black light. In the distorted spacetime, Yun Yao, Ji Ku Yank Chao Qingyu, and Bai Feng were recuperating from their injuries in seclusion. Originally, Bai Feng was not suited to enter the distorted spacetime. This was the place where only Ji Tianxing's closest family members could enter seclusion. On the 3rd level of the Divine Pagoda, Bai Feng had created her own mountain and lake as well as her residence. However, Ji Tianxing was going to attack the Xuanji Grotto heaven soon. Bai Feng's recovery in that cave abode was too slow, so she could only enter the distorted spacetime. Yank originally wanted to return to the Sword World and recuperate in the Anchui city. He was now on good terms with the Earth Spirit tribe and had already become their guardian god. He had taught them many cultivation techniques. However, for the same reason, Ji Tianxing called him back to the distorted spacetime to recover from his injuries as soon as possible. Everyone understood his thoughts. They were all very shocked and excited, and their hearts were filled with anticipation. How could they miss out on such a grand and spectacular achievement that would definitely be passed down through the ages to become the overlord of a continent? Thus, without Ji Tianxing's instructions, everyone focused on recuperating. They were afraid that their injuries would heal too slowly and they would not be able to participate in the battle in the future. Ji Tianxing did not slack off either. He sat cross-legged under the blood flame sacred tree and continuously activated the power of the heaven mending pearl to heal his godhead. With his previous experience, he no longer had any worries and apprehensions. He activated the heaven mending pearl with all his might and released a sacred white light to fill his mind. However, it was a pity that no matter what he did this time, he could not enter that wondrous dream realm again. Even though his injuries were slowly and steadily recovering under the nourishment of the heaven-mending pearl. However, he still felt that it was a pity. In that dream realm last time he vaguely understood something. He had some enlightenment, but it was not very deep. If he could enter that dream realm again and carefully experience it once more, he would definitely understand the meaning of that dream realm and the enlightenment it brought him. Just like that, Ji Tianxing remained clear-headed and did not feel any pain. He was very dull as he circulated his energy to heal his injuries. After a month he suddenly had an idea. Since the heaven-mending pearl's white light filled his mind, he did not need to do anything to heal his injuries. How could he waste time? Why not take this opportunity to comprehend the heaven-punishing divine art and deduce the next technique? Now that he had reached the upper divine king stage, he should be cultivating the 5th level of the heaven-punishing divine art. He had previously deduced the 5th level of the technique in advance, but it was only a prototype and had yet to form a system. Thinking of this, he began to try. Billions of patterns of the heaven-punishing sword formation appeared in his mind. He carefully analyzed and comprehended the sword intent and profundity contained in each pattern. As time passed, more and more understanding appeared in his mind. He continuously modified and perfected the foundation of the 5th level of the technique. Just like that, 2 years passed in a flash. The sacred white light in his mind was exhausted again. His injuries had also recovered by 40%. He had also deduced the foundation of the 5th level of the heaven-punishing divine art. He could begin the preliminary cultivation. This result made him feel gratified. He originally wanted to strike while the iron was hot and continue to heal his injuries and perfect the heaven-punishing divine art. But he remembered that half a month had passed since the Chief of Internal Affairs had agreed on with him. Thus he ended his cultivation and left the distorted space-time. 45 minutes later, he met the Chief of Internal Affairs in the Alliance Master's study. He also did not know what the Chief of Internal Affairs had been busy with in this half a month. However, looking at his busy figure and slightly tired eyes, he knew that he must have been extremely busy and could not be in 2 places. There was no choice. The 10,000 Demon Alliance was a big family in business. There were too many things to handle. Ji Tianxing, the acting Alliance Master, was just a hands-off shopkeeper. All the affairs were handed over to his confidants. Naturally, the Chief of Internal Affairs, the left and right protectors Zhou Xian, and the others were abnormally busy during this period. When the master and servant met, there was no superfluous greetings and did not waste time. They went straight to the point. Ergu, report the recent situation and the information you found out. The Chief of Internal Affairs nodded and answered methodically. According to the young master's instructions, 12 days ago in the city square, the White Night Wolf was executed in public. This action was indeed effective. It deterred many people with evil intentions. In this half a month, dozens of suspicious people quietly left the 10,000 demon city. The number of people entering the city also decreased sharply by half. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 3754. There were 2 reasons for executing White Night Wolf. First, he deserved to die. Second, it was to make an example out of him to intimidate others. Since it was effective, Ji Tianxing was naturally pleased. The Chief of Internal Affairs continued, I've used the line that infiltrated Xuanji Grotto Heaven and found many useful clues. However, 6 of the 13 spies and scouts on that line have exposed their identities. 4 others are suspected by Xuanji Grotto Heaven and have been targeted. The 6 who were exposed have been executed by Xuanji Grotto Heaven and died horrible deaths. The 4 who were targeted have also left Xuanji Grotto Heaven's territory and paid a terrible price to return to our territory. Ji Tianxing did not expect the outcome to be so tragic. He could not help but frown. Bring the injured back to Myriad Demon City and treat them well. Double the rewards. As for the dead, if you can find their bodies, then do so. If you can't, then forget it. Comfort their families and give them 4 times the compensation. Take good care of their descendants. These people are all heroes of the Myriad Demon Alliance. They must be recorded so that everyone can learn and admire them. Hearing Ji Tianxing's arrangements, the Chief of Internal Affairs hurriedly bowed and said sincerely, On behalf of the men, I thank the young master for his generosity. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, Take care of this matter. Let's talk about the intelligence report first. The Chief of Internal Affairs suppressed his somewhat excited and emotional thoughts and bowed as he reported, The situation at Xuanji Grotto Heaven is similar to what the young master predicted. The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor has yet to return to Xuanji Grotto Heaven. The Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu are not dead. They have escaped to Xuanji Grotto Heaven but have been in seclusion to heal their wounds. Xuanji Grotto Heaven's security is very tight. Their businesses and forces are also shrinking their defenses, fully prepared for our counterattack. At the same time, Xuanji Grotto Heaven has mobilized many domain lords and inspectors in the name of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor to rush back to protect Xuanji Grotto Heaven. After a pause he continued, currently the top experts in Xuanji Grotto Heaven are the Battle Dragon King, Qin Yu, and a Golden Dragon Guard commander. That person's strength was second only to Tan Yu, and now he had already taken over Tan Yu's position as vice domain chief. In addition, there were 2 8th-degree realm god generals who guarded the peak of Sky Crane Mountain all year round, guarding the winter entrance. There were more than 30 high god kings inside and outside the mystical grotto. They were all famous experts of the Starsource continent. Among them were the domain lords of the various central regions, the inspectors who patrolled the Starsource continent, and the sect masters and leaders of the vassal forces. As for mid-level and low-level god kings, there are already more than 50 of them inside and outside the mysterious cave. After the chief steward finished his report, Ji Tianxing had a general understanding of the mysterious paradise's power. He asked, "What about the people in our alliance? How's the gathering going?" At the mention of this matter, the Minister of Internal Affairs' face became somewhat gloomy, and he revealed a bitter smile. Originally, there were 12 factions under our alliance that were capable of sending out 2 or 3 god kings. Normally, these forces were also very respectful to the alliance and obeyed their orders. But this time they guessed that the alliance was going to attack the Enigma Grotto, and they were scared out of their wits. When the alliance's orders were passed down, they came up with all sorts of excuses. 7 of them refused to participate in the battle and only 5 of them obeyed the order. Currently there are 12 god kings gathered. However, these 12 are all low-level and mid-level god kings. Yesterday I was still discussing with the 2 protectors whether we should use force to force the 7 factions to participate in the battle. After all, the alliance has always treated them well and gave them many benefits. The worry in Ji Tianxing's eyes deepened and he said in a low voice, "Although the mysterious paradise doesn't have any top experts, they have too many backbones. The number of god kings in our alliance is less than half of theirs, so this battle will be very difficult. As for the 7 factions, they dared to sit on the fence at this time, so they must be punished severely. But now is not the time to make a move on them. First send people to watch them secretly. Once we've dealt with the mysterious paradise, we'll uproot them." The chief steward nodded to show that he obeyed. After hesitating for a moment he asked, "Young master, even if the situation is not optimistic, are you still going to attack? Are you not going to delay this matter? Are we not going to wait for the old alliance master to return?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said in a certain tone, "How long will it take for Ophiuchus to return? Have you sent a message? I'm afraid the Gold Source Dragon Emperor will be back before he does. Also, the backbones of the mysterious paradise are very strong, so we'll push in step by step and destroy them from the outside to the inside. They don't have any top experts, so naturally they can't stop our attack." The chief steward thought for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. "Young master, you mean we won't attack the mysterious paradise directly, but will attack their external forces first?" "Of course." The chief steward's expression relaxed and he hurriedly reported, "I've already found out that the mysterious paradise's external forces and reinforcements have been gathering in the divine starfield recently. They've split into 4 different directions and are gathering in 4 different empires. So far we've only found the gathering points of 2 groups of people, and there are 2 more bases that we're still investigating." Ji Tianxing looked at him with praise and said, "Ergu, you've done very well. Continue to investigate and you must find out where those 2 bases are. However, you must instruct the men to be careful and not alert the enemy." "Yes, young master." The chief steward's tone was firm. Next, the 2 of them discussed some more details, and then the chief steward took his leave to carry out his orders. Ji Tianxing also returned to the secret chamber and continued to heal his injuries in seclusion. However, just as he returned to the distorted space, a young man's voice sounded in his mind. "Young master, I've been in seclusion for many years. When will I be able to follow you?" This unfamiliar yet familiar voice came from Peng Fei. This little golden rock originally thought that following Ji Tianxing would allow him to travel the world, increase his knowledge and learn powerful mystiques and secret techniques. He didn't expect that after following Ji Tianxing he would spend most of his time in seclusion in the Divine Tower. Ji Tianxing only gave him some pointers occasionally, and then he busied himself with his own matters. It was also fortunate that Ji Tianxing was preoccupied with many things recently and virtually forgot about his existence. Otherwise, Ji Tianxing would definitely find some time to send Ping Fei back to the 9 mystical grotto heaven. Now Ping Fei could not bear the loneliness and took the initiative to transmit his voice to complain. Ji Tianxing naturally had to respond. Peng Fei, wanting to become a divine king powerhouse, you have to be able to endure loneliness and endure the dullness of cultivation. Otherwise, if one's heart isn't firm enough, how can one become a peerless powerhouse? I have very important things to do recently, so you continue your seclusion then. After this matter is over, I'll naturally let you out. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3755. Hearing that Ji Tianxing was busy with something big, Peng Fei did not feel depressed. Instead, he felt excited and expectant. He had a young and cheerful personality. He had the noble golden rock bloodline and talent, but he could not endure the boredom of cultivation. That was why he escaped from the 9 mystical grotto heaven and wandered the Star Source continent. After meeting Ji Tianxing, he followed Ji Tianxing everywhere. Now that he had been cultivating in seclusion for too long, he was already bored. Hearing Ji Tianxing's words, how could he let go of this opportunity? Young master, if you want to do something big, you can't do it alone. I'm willing to serve you like a dog and horse. I'm duty-bound to lead the troops. Ji Tianxing said calmly, although you've reached the 9th level of the Divine Lord realm, you're not a divine king. You can't help much. Peng Fei choked, but he did not give up. Young master, although I'm weak and can't charge into battle, I can stay by your side and help you plan. If not, I can run errands and pass on messages. Ji Tianxing was a little speechless. After a moment of silence, he said, no need. Just cultivate in seclusion. When I need you, I'll summon you. All right. Peng Fei was like a deflated balloon, instantly becoming dispirited. Ji Tianxing ignored him and continued to use the power of the heaven-mending pearl to heal the godhead's injuries. Ever since the news of the battle in the Sky River mystic realm spread, the situation in the entire Star Source continent became very tense. The Myriad Demon Alliance and the Mystical Grotto Heaven, these two superforces, became the focus of billions of demons. Although all the demons in the Star Source continent knew that the rapidly rising Myriad Demon Alliance would not be tolerated by the Mystical Grotto Heaven. There would be a battle between these two superforces sooner or later. The winner would control the Star Source continent, and the loser would be reduced to ashes. When the time came, the battle between the two giants would bring endless turmoil and chaos to the Star Source continent. This was something that everyone was well aware of. However, no one could have predicted that because of Long Tian's appearance, the battle between the two giants would actually break out prematurely. Although countless forces and godly kings had not been able to witness the battle in the Sky River secret territory with their own eyes, however, the news circulating on the Star Source continent described the battle vividly. Especially when Alliance leader Luo Ho and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor had destroyed the secret realm and perished together in the void. This had shocked everyone. Luckily, later on, news spread that those were merely the clones of the two powerhouses and not their original selves. Only then did the emotions of the hundreds of millions of people calm down, the shock in their hearts lessening by more than half. Even so, everyone knew very well that the Myriad Demon Alliance and the Enigma Utopia had already shed all pretense of cordiality. A great battle was imminent. What happened afterwards also proved this point. Over the past month, the 10,000 Demon Alliance had been preparing for the war actively. While shrinking the defense, they had also gathered their forces quickly. A few days later, after the news had spread, the Enigma Wonderland issued many orders to summon experts and experts. For an entire month, a storm was brewing on the Star Source continent. It was unknown how many Divine Lord experts and Divine King experts were gathering in the territories of the two major forces. The current situation was like the calm before the storm, with swords drawn and bows drawn. The forces and divine kings who had the ability and qualifications to participate in this battle were all thinking about what they should do. Should they help the 10,000 Demon Alliance? Or help the Enigma Wonderland? Or should they play it safe and watch from the sidelines? Every force and divine king had their own choice. However, most people chose to watch from the sidelines. Even many of the territorial lords were no exception. Although they were Enigma Wonderland's subordinates and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's subjects in name, they knew that they were the territorial lords. They had fought for the position of territorial lord themselves, and it was not bestowed upon them by the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. Even if the 10,000 Demon Alliance destroyed the Enigma Wonderland and took control of the Starsource continent, they would still be the territorial lords. Of course, most experts and forces were not optimistic about the 10,000 Demon Alliance's chances. In their opinion, the Enigma Wonderland had controlled the Starsource continent for more than 20,000 years and was deeply rooted in the continent. Although the 10,000 Demon Alliance had risen very quickly and had many experts, they had not developed for long. Everyone guessed that the 10,000 Demon Alliance's chances of winning were not high. At most, it would not exceed 20%. As such, the various top forces and experts were already doing the 10,000 Demon Alliance a great favor by watching from the sidelines. As the days passed, the situation became more and more tense. The 10,000 Demon Alliance and the Enigma Wonderland started to clash and kill each other. Although it was only a small area of competition and friction, there were still many elite deaths. Many forces and experts knew that this was a test before the battle. An earth-shattering and bloody battle was about to begin. Fortunately, this was the Dragon Realm, the world of the demon race. This was the oldest race since the creation of the world. They had grown up in wars of blood and fire. They believed in the law of the jungle. Even if the two giants were about to fight and the people of the Starsource continent would be plunged into misery and suffering, no one felt that it was inappropriate. No one would jump out and accuse the 10,000 Demon Alliance and the Enigma Wonderland of ignoring the lives of the people. Another half a month passed. Zhou Xian had been in seclusion for another 2 years to heal his injuries in the twisted space-time. The Dao injury of his divine spark had been completely healed, and he was back to his peak condition. Moreover, he had improved the level 5 of the heaven-punishing divine skill even more. His strength had increased imperceptibly compared to before. Today was the day he came out of seclusion. Outside the secret chamber, the left and right protectors and the chief of internal affairs had been waiting for a long time. Creak, creak, creak. The stone door of the secret chamber opened, and Zhou Xian walked out in a white robe. Tang Wu, Lan Qi and Fu Ergu quickly bowed and said in unison, "Welcome back, young master." Zhou Xian looked at them with a smile. Seeing the fatigue in their eyes, he could not help but say, "You guys have worked hard for the past month." The three of them quickly said that it was not hard at all. It was their duty to serve the 10,000 Demon Alliance and carry out missions for the young master. Both sides exchanged greetings and Zhou Xian asked, "How are your preparations?" Fu Ergu quickly replied, "Reporting to young master, the basic preparations are done. Even the 2 secret bases have been investigated. We did not alert the enemy. Now the tens of thousands of soldiers under our command are gathered in the 3 regions and outside the 10,000 demon city. They are waiting for your order." Zhou Xian nodded in satisfaction and said, "That's good. Then we don't have to waste any more time. Prepare for war. Fu Ergu will be in charge of the 10,000 demon city. I will personally lead a few elders and a group of soldiers to take the lead. The left and right protectors will lead a few elders and a group of soldiers." As early as more than a month ago, Zhou Xian had wanted to fight this battle. Of course, he had been prepared for it. Therefore, he directly gave the order to split up without hesitation.